All right, let's do it. We here now. Yes. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode. Uh huh. Bring your asses in here, man. Like niggas was not hot, man. Come on. Uh, come on now. Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Hotep History Live with your host, with the most, President Hotep Dude, representing the Hotep Nation. You know it. Yes, sir. Let's go, Spitter. Talk to him. Mm-hmm. Oh, this nigga taking all bitches with you. Shut the fuck up, Shut my niggas up, Yeah, yeah. I can talk about the things in a minute, Come on, y'all. They're offended when I'm walking around on cover head. They can go to hide and they woman. Come on. Baby girl knows the system number Noah. I can have you shine like a jeweler. Candy paint make the old whip Noah. Come on. Come on in here. We turning up tonight, man. Yes. Am I too loud? Am I coming in too loud? You turn it down just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'll make sure I'm coming in loud. But clear as well. Loud and clear. You feel me? Come on in here, man. You don't know good music. That's that problem. Uh, come on now, man. Come on in here. Make sure you repost the stream. Repost the stream. Let the people know that you are in here. Let them know that you are in here, man. Oh, man. Another one in the books, ladies and gentlemen. Another week in the books. It's already Friday. See, the week flew by with me. Not even gonna hold you. It flew by. I've been working. My head has been down the entire time. Working, 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 working. That's all I did this week. That's all I cared to do this week. To be totally honest with you, I didn't think about doing anything else other than putting work in. You feel me? When it comes to Hotep history, this is daily work. Daily work. Every day, I'm reading primary sources. Every day, I'm reading secondary sources. Every day, I'm in the archives. Every day. Every day. So, yeah, I ain't even gonna lie to you. I looked up and realized it was Friday morning. Like, for real. And I'm happy to report that, man. Getting the work done. It's all about being able to get the work done. So, how was your week, beloveds? Did you guys get it done? Did you get it done? Did you meet all objectives? Okay? Did you complete goals? Did you complete the mission? Okay? Are you better today than you were yesterday? Are you better today than you were last Friday? You know? Let me know something. Let me know something. Big things are happening over here at Hotep History. Okay? I can let you know that right now. Big things are happening over here at Hotep History. Okay? Very proud, very proud. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow at noon, me and my boy, Hotep Mac, will be hosting the Hotep History Podcast, episode 5. This week's episode is going to be all about Black American traditionalism. So, just at the top of all of this, I want you guys to know that we must return. We must return
to the traditions that our ancestors were always using and always made a custom of our culture. 100%. We need to get back to all of the foundational principles, morals, values, beliefs that got us to, the era of 1965. Period. We have to. I tell you guys all of the time about that century run, that 1865 to 1965 run, that 100-year run. It's only because, and I mean that, it's only because of the ancestors and Black American traditionalism. Okay? If you go to my page, it says it right there. Hotep and Bill, historian, Black American traditionalist. Okay? That is what I am. So I want all of you guys, okay? I want all of you guys who are huge fans of Hotep history, huge fans of me and the work that I do to come through. But I also want you modern, you modern guys, the guys that push for Black American modernism. Please come on through. Show me. Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong about going back to emphasizing home ownership, land ownership, being sufficient, growing your own foods, building your own homes, being able to make your own clothes, being able to create communities, sustain communities, being able to vote with your self-interest, being able to emphasize God, emphasize family, all of the traditions that the ancestors created in this country. That's what we're going to be talking about. And I'm telling y'all, I'm not holding back. I'm not holding back. So trust and believe, you're going to have to come. You have to bring it. For sure. Shout out to Who in the chat. $5 super chat. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to you, Who. Shout out to you, Who, for coming through and always showing love with the comments and the super chats. You dig? Very much appreciated. But yeah, so that's what's coming tomorrow at noon. Make sure you go over to this tweet, RSVP, you know what I'm saying? Makes me feel good that you guys are, tapping in with the show. Last week was amazing. We talked all about how all gun control is racist with my brother Maj Toure. An amazing conversations. One of the things that I welcome, okay, when it comes to the Hotep History Podcast is debate. I welcome debate to the highest degree. You do not have to agree with me in order for you to be right. Having an echo chamber and all of that stuff is only cool when you guys are echoing actual, correct things. You feel me? I don't go out of my way to be incorrect. I don't go out of my way to say things that are not backed by some type of scholarship or some type of facts. Because that, why else? Now, it's going to be certain things that I speak about where it's just like intuitive, it's just a gut feeling and stuff like that. But for the most part, the things that I stand on are backed by historical, data. That's the entire point. So, with that being said, I don't know everything. There are going to be things that I may have a blind spot on or whatever. So I encourage debate. I encourage people being able to share their differing opinions and all of that. Keep it respectful, of course. There's no need to get disrespectful. There's no need to get irate, because I promise you I'm going to get disrespectful back. That's just what it is. Okay? There was a couple people who, through the course of these 4 episodes so far, got out of pocket a little bit, and I had to, get out of pocket with them, So keep it respectful. We can have healthy debates and we'll be just fine. So shout out to everybody that'll be there. If you miss it, you're going to miss a treat, because I'm telling you, as soon as the conversation is done, we're going right to the Patreon. It's going right to Patreon. So if you were thinking you're going to catch it on the playback, on the replay, on the timeline, guess again. You will have to, and you should, subscribe to the Patreon to be able to check it out, which brings me to this part right here. Make sure that you are following and subscribing to all of the things up here: Patreon, Kick, YouTube, Instagram, me on Twitter, and then, of course, on TikTok. Daily content is being posted. You're going to love it. Okay? One of the things that I do appreciate about Hotep history is just the lane that I'm in. You dig? I understand that there are other there are other history content creators and all that other stuff, which is absolutely cool. I do look to work with a few of them in the future. However, I know that I talk about things that are not necessarily popular. There have been several people that I've covered on here. I mean, even this week that that you can't really Google them, and if you do Google them, it's not going to be that much information on them. I chase these people down. You know what I'm saying? I chase these people down in the archives, in the primary sources, to be able to get as much information as possible about them. And those are going to be the figures that I talk about. In one of my last videos that I uploaded, or my last little clips, I talked about a man by the name of Wallace A. Battle. Wallace A. Battle. Wallace Aaron Battle. He was the founder of the Okolona Industrial School. Then it was called the Okolona College. And I'm pretty like, how many of you guys talked about this person or heard about this person? And so that's what Hotep History is here to do, is to have you guys rediscover or uncover a bunch of Black American histories that have just been lost to time and forgotten about. You guys know how I feel about the term hidden history and stuff like that, is because if you're able to tell me that it was hidden, then that obviously means that it's not. If you know about it, then it's not hidden. It can be forgotten. It can be, so to speak, lost to time. People it's not at the top of mind or whatever. But as far as it being hidden from you, there's no way that it was hidden from you and then you know about it. If it's hidden from you, then it's hidden from you. So when it comes down to things that you come across, those things, they're not hidden. However, there's a lot of just forgotten Black American history that I believe needs to be highlighted, that I believe 100% had a lot to do with the progression of Black America overall. We talk about the 5 groups all of the time, right? So the professional, the commercial, the industrial, the intellectual, and the political, like those people in those different groups, those 5 different groups, there are so many. I'm talking about thousands, if not millions, of Black Americans who fall into those types and into those groups that did so much to progress for the advancement of Black America. So my job is always to be able to shine light on those people. You feel me? Shout out to Kat Kaba S. Ankh for the $50 super chat. What's going on? What's going on? That's what I'm talking about. Good super chats to start the night. Shout out to y'all, man. I appreciate it. I'm just here to keep bringing that good old history for y'all. I appreciate it. For real. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So tonight, well, before we get into tonight, I'll tell you about my day. This morning, y'all, I don't know what it was. I have no idea what it was, but my brain was in this weird fog. You feel me? A cat says Hotep Black Power. That's what I'm talking about. Big Hotep, big Black Power in the building for sure. But I was in a big fog this morning. Like, I just really couldn't get my bearings mentally. I couldn't hone in on one particular thought. It was so weird. And I couldn't place it. I could not understand why I couldn't think. Like, I'm talking about, like, I'm sitting here getting ready for the show tonight and, trying to aggregate things, for the show for you guys and all this other stuff. And I couldn't pinpoint what I wanted to talk about, how I was going to approach it. And it was just a fog. So it was a sign to me, that I do need to get a little bit more rest. I do stay up late to get stuff done. And so, I have to be able to get rest. You know what I'm saying? So that's a clear message to me that I need to get some rest. And I am. But yeah. So I started my day in the daze. You know what I'm saying? A little bit of a fog. And it's all good. I'm still gonna push through no matter what. And I thought to myself, like, okay, I understand there's a problem, so let's get to the solution. So the thing that I did was I listened to ironically enough, I know it's kind of antithetical just because of the sound, but I started to listen to jazz. I started to listen to, Miles Davis. I started to listen to bossa nova, which is like Brazilian samba jazz from like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's like one of my favorite genres. And just be able to quiet my mind in a way to where I was able to relax a little bit, dial back into what I wanted, and that's what was able to ground me this morning. Hopped into my workout with that semi fog and all that other stuff, but was able to make it through. So yeah, it was one of those human experiences, man, that we all have. I'm not above the human experience as exceptional as I believe that I am when it comes to like my, scholarship, when it comes to history and stuff like that and all of that. I'm still a human, man. I'm still a human. So at the end of the day, I just had to shake it off, get back to work. And that's exactly what I did. So I spent the greater part of the day just working on Hotep history, writing down some plans that I have as it pertains to the content. Coming next week, we're going to be having a Patreon only live stream on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So in the same way that we're talking now, starting at 8 o'clock, it'll be on Patreon from about like 9:30 to the time that we end. So on YouTube, Kick, and Twitter, it'll be on at 8 o'clock. We'll rock to about 9:30. And then from 9:30 to close, it'll be on Patreon. So definitely want to subscribe to the Patreon for sure. Definitely subscribe. Patreon.com/Hotep History. Patreon.com/Hotep History. Like I said, daily content is coming. Exclusive content is coming. Early access to content is coming. You guys will be able to engage with the way Hotep History Live is run. And I'm also going to have I'm going to incorporate a hotline so you guys will be able to call in. So you guys will be able to call in for the show and be able to participate, give me your 2 cents on what the subject matter is. So it's just only going to grow. It's only going to get more interactive and engaging. So you definitely want to subscribe to all of the things. So right now, if you're under the sound of my voice, make sure that you are subscribing right now. Follow me on all of the things: Patreon, Kick, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow those pages right now. Follow them, follow them, follow them. You're going to love it. I got a bunch of clips coming out over the weekend and going into next week. I've been working super hard on all of this stuff, and I want you guys to be able to enjoy it and not miss any of it. So make sure you're tapping in. That was my day, just working on Hotep history. That's how, I was giving it up. Let's see. Let me check both chats. Let me check both the chats. I got technically 3 chats going. Technically three. So yeah, just making sure that you're tapping in on all of those. We got Kari in the building. What's going on, Kari? Yeah. For sure. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in the title, we're talking about the history of Black and Native Americans. This is like one of those hot button topics and stuff like that because there's, for the past several years, been a very large and loud population of Black Americans who stand on their Native ancestry. And we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to get down. We're going to tap into the relationship between Native Americans and Black Americans. We're going to talk about the Black Seminoles again. We talked about that when it came down to the cultural subgroups episode. I forgot which number that was, but we had an entire stream about that. So we're going to get into the admixture between Black Americans and Native Americans. One of the sources that I read that we're going to get into is that about 1/3 of Black Americans have Native ancestry. One of the things that I'm pretty sure us 90s babies heard a lot coming up with the phrase, I got some Indian in my family and all of that. So I'm pretty sure you've heard that in your life. So we're going to add historical color, historical context to those narratives that we've heard. We're also going to talk about Native Americans enslaving Black Americans, because I do truly believe that's a part of it that a lot of people don't like to talk about. It's similar to how people don't necessarily talk about the Arab slave trade as it pertains to enslaving Africans and stuff like that. and how a lot of people like to put it just on the shoulders of the European, and that's just not historically accurate. That's also just not true. Like you have to be able to tell the full story. Arabs are right now enslaving Africans. Native Americans enslaved Black Americans. So yeah, one of the things that I learned when I was doing my research for, I forgot which episode it was, but it was about, I want to say it was episode 3 of Hotep History, not Hotep History Live, where I learned that the great majority of Native Americans fought, if they did fight, for the Confederacy. They fought for the Confederacy. So again, when it comes down to this stuff, people just need to know the full history. A lot of the times where I read the contemporary narratives is just that, it was nothing but peace and harmony amongst natives and Black Americans, and Black Americans are the natives and stuff like that. And listen, I understand that there's a mixture dating back centuries. I just want everybody to be clear on how that mixture started. It's literally, to me, as far as the mode of miscegenation, I guess you would call the mixing of the two, no different than when people talk about mulattoes and white and black mixed people. It's the same thing. It's like you have somebody who's enslaved you and or partnered with you, just like with white people. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to see those varying degrees of relationships, and we're going to get into all of that tonight. So, like I said, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, all of the things. Make sure you're sharing, reposting, letting everybody know what you're watching tonight, letting everybody know that you rock with Hotep History. Okay, let's get as many people in the building tonight. Okay, so we got several sources tonight that I pulled up that are also my assistant researcher, unofficial assistant researcher, Crystal helped me out with, that I'm going to be sharing. So let's get into the first one here. This is, so we can just make sure, so this is page 12. We can go back to the beginning. This is called Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage by William Loren Katz. This is a secondary source, but it does have primary source sites in it. And so yeah, we'll start with this one. Hold on, let me show y'all let me zoom out so I can see the full cover here. This is what it looks like here. All right, and we're gonna get into it. It was page 12, right? Oh look, we got some, because I was going straight to the chapter, but we got some good stuff here that we can look at here. Let's zoom on in. So you're gonna see a lot of these people here. This is gonna be your pretty much your typical Black American native here. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. So let's go to the table of contents here. I mean, I guess we can do the introduction. That's what we were on. So yeah, introduction. So let's read this, and then we'll see where it leads us. Because again, I aggregate this stuff and then I react to it live. I haven't read. I know I didn't read this book. And there was a few others I were going to use, like Nat Love. I read his autobiography and stuff like that, which just talks about the relationship between him and Native Americans. But I digress. Black Indians? The very words make most people shake their heads in disbelief or smile at what appears to be a joke, a play on words. No one remembers any such person in a school text, history book, or Western novel. None ever appeared. Yet they lived and roamed all over the Americas. Their story began with the first European landings in the New World, reached from New England to Brazil, and continues today. The number of Afro-Americans with an Indian ancestor was estimated about 1/3 of the total. In Latin America, the percentage is much higher. This means that an important page in history has been missing. 3 great races, red, white, and black, built the Americas together. Their contributions and their interrelationships, have filled libraries with scholarly studies, history texts, and novels. The relationship between European and Native Americans and between Europeans and Africans have been thoroughly studied, but one relationship has not. We can check this picture out first. Okay. Conspicuous by its neglect is the relationship on this soil between red and black people. In 1920, historian Carter G. Woodson called it one of the longest unwritten chapters in the history of the United States. He wondered if Africans did not find, quote, among Indians one of their means to escape from slavery. Dr. Woodson's chapter still remains unwritten, his escape theory hardly explored. This book means to tackle both the chapters and the theory. Black Indians, like other Afro-Americans, have been treated by the writers of history as invisible. Their contributions were denied or handed to others. Where mentioned, their role has been distorted. For example, the Negro Cowboys by Durham and Jones, an otherwise objective study, calls black people who joined the Indians renegades, a terrifying term borrowed from Hollywood westerns to describe vicious killers. The Negro Cowboys also declares, quote, for every Negro renegade who joined against the white man, a company of Negro soldiers fought the Indians. This single sentence mangles some important history. It understates the number of black Indians by hundreds of thousands. It also suggests that slaves should remain loyal to their owners and praises those who, quote, fought the Indians. It is not the U.S. chroniclers of the past. It's not that U.S. chroniclers of the past have failed to see a black Indian heritage through the eyes of non-whites, for that is understandable. Almost all were white. What is unforgivable is that some have insisted on seeing past events through the eyes of a slaveholding and Indian killing class that has been dead for a century or more. But omission, not distortion, is the far more serious culprit in hiding the history of the black Indians of the Americas. Observers, not expecting to find Africans among Indians, did not report their presence. For example, artist George Catlin painted a magnificent portrait of Chief Osceola. Osceola. And I know I'm going to be butchering a lot of native names tonight, so just bear with me. Just bear with me. Let's see. When he and other Seminoles were held captive at Fort Moultrie in 1837, Catlin never painted or mentioned the Osceola's personal bodyguard of 55 warriors, including 52 black Seminoles. Had his artistry captured their presence, he would have contributed vastly to our understanding of anthropology and history. Excuse me. I have some empathy for this blindness. During research for my book, The Black West, I kept unearthing frontier documents and photographs that established a significant okay, hold on. We'll go to the picture in a second. Significant black Indian presence on the U.S. frontier. I never fully weighed my evidence, and The Black West gave black Indians minor attention until the third edition. As my private collection of Indian photographs and documentation piled up, it became clear the subject needed fuller treatment. Though it is unfamiliar terrain, I have chosen to begin this story at the beginning, with the earliest foreign landings in the Western Hemisphere. This has two advantages. It establishes a black Indian participation in democratic movements years, decades, or centuries before the American Revolution. It also demonstrates that dark people ignored the boundaries drawn by Europeans in their move from one country to another in search of liberty, justice, or a better life. This unknown American history is deeply rooted in the human currents that shaped our early life. Two parallel institutions joined to create black Indians. The seizure and mistreatment of Indians in their lands and the enslavement of Africans. In their conquest of the New World, Europeans were determined to use both dark peoples. Quote, 10 whites are not enough to watch one Negro, said a Portuguese slave master living in Brazil in 1735. To protect slavery and prevent resistance, Europeans developed brutal methods of control and degrading racial policies. There is evidence that European genocidal attacks on Indians in the New World may have an additional explanation besides land hunger and greed. Perhaps another reason for eliminating Indians was to prevent their allegiance or their alliance with Africans. Colonial Europeans left evidence aplenty that this was often an overriding fear. So we already know when it comes down to the Black Seminoles and the Seminole Wars, how Black Americans and Native Americans linked up and fought against Europeans in Florida. Okay, and then of course they subsequently made it to Mexico and created the Muskogos people in Mexico. Okay, research into early American history confronts one with some inaccurate traditional assumptions and vocabulary. Columbus, believing he had landed in the East Indies, called the inhabitants Indians. His error has become so much a part of our language that today even many Native Americans accept it. I have used both designations. However, I have dropped such derisive terms as half breed, renegade, and tribe in characterizing Native Americans and Africans. If Europeans came from nations, so too did non-whites. And again, when it comes down to the classifications, right? They talk about the Indian Removal Act and the reclassification of Native Americans to Negro and the overlapping or conflation of those classifications, and that's where a lot of like modern day Black Americans who claim Native ancestry, they're big on that. They're big on what is it? What is the word I'm looking for? Reclaiming the lands that their ancestors worked and lived on. They're all about being able to have their status be bumped up to, Native American as opposed to just Black American. Some of them even go as far as saying that most Black Americans are actually, Native and stuff like that. And I am one of the people that understand that first and foremost fact based, right? When it comes down to the transatlantic slave trade, the United States or North America specifically had the least amount of African slaves brought to it. So you had the most happening in Brazil, and then you had the least happening in North America. We got about 5% of all slaves throughout the entire transatlantic slave trade. North America, or which would be the colony of America, only had 5% of the slaves. So once it became the United States of America, that's the ancestry as far as Africa goes when it comes to Black Americans. However, there were obviously inhabitants here already. And just that admixture between those 5% of Africans and then the natives here, yes, it does make sense that there are going to be a lot of Black natives or Black Americans with Native ancestry. It just only makes sense. Because in the same way, again, and I don't know if they're going to talk about it in this book, but I already have sources that already talk about Native American slave owners and stuff like that. The same thing was happening. You're taking men and women as slaves, so of course you're going to do with the women what you want, and it doesn't necessarily all have to be SA. However, yeah, you're going to have some of that there too. So yeah, the mixture happens consensually, non-consensually, just like when it comes down to the European, you're going to have a mixture of both. Okay, so here we go. I have defined Black Indians as people who have a dual ancestry or Black people who have lived for some time with Native Americans. When slaves escaped to the woods and joined or began remote communities, they are called by the Spanish term Maroons. All right. In discussing the time when most foreigners in the Americas came from either Europe or Africa, I have used such words as Spaniard or African. When it is clear they were born in the Western Hemisphere, I then use such terms as white, Black, or Afro-American. I have not designated only U.S. citizens as Americans, for that broad category belongs to all people of the Americas. Excuse me. Despite their bias, I have had no choice but to accept Latin America, British colonies, and American Revolution because other phrases would prove cumbersome or unclear. And the photo here is 1886. These Shoshone Indians were photographed in Reno, Nevada, with their Black friend, One Horse Charlie. So that's One Horse Charlie right there. So what I want to just make clear here is just a distinction. They're making clear distinctions between natives and Black Americans, even if they are mixed in blood or ancestry. Okay. So we got another photo here. Kiowa Indians or Kiowa Indian members of the Baptist Church included a mixture of Indians and Blacks. Here we go. I have been humbled by the awesome task of rejecting bias in so explosively controversial a topic and one peopled with so stormy a set of characters. In this story, even the simple question of criminality is open to interpretation. Were those who escaped slavery seeking freedom or breaking the law? Were Black Indian maroon settlements havens or self determination or conspiracies against the European state? One solution I've adopted has been to offer eyewitness accounts and to see that the neglected views of Africans and Native Americans are presented. See, this is what I was talking about as far as primary sources. I have never sought a bland neutrality and have consoled myself that unbiased history has yet to be written in our world. Talk about it. Talk about it. I tell people all of the time that no matter who's writing, what they're writing for, there's always a narrative that they're constructing and there's always an agenda. I tell you guys my agenda almost every episode. I am here to highlight the good, great, and excellent of Black American history. Period. That is what I'm here to do. I am here to highlight. I am here to showboat. I am here to instill pride. I'm here to educate and inspire and motivate people based upon specifically Black American history. I want you guys to be elated to learn about this stuff. I want you guys to be inundated with the information that I'm giving you. I want you guys to be absolutely enthralled with the messages that I'm bringing out there via the ancestors. Point blank, period. That's my agenda. Is to instill pride. It's to instill, oneness with the ancestors. It's to instill and combat all of the BS that you guys have been told, that we've been told in public schools about our ancestors. I do not agree with, and I do not like the mainstream view of the Black American ancestral class, and I'm just not going for it. And I'm going to do everything in my power to, reconfigure and restructure that narrative to the day I die. That is why we here at Hotep History. I make my agenda very clear because it's a righteous one. But everybody has a bias, everybody has a narrative, and everybody has an agenda. Okay? Everybody. There's not anybody walking on earth. So whatever, books that you've read up until this point, whatever you've been taught in school up until this point, the people who put that curriculum together, not even the teachers, so to speak, but the people who crafted those textbooks, the people who crafted the syllabus, the people who crafted the curriculum, they 100% had a narrative and an agenda that they were putting on to that, to those textbooks and curriculum. And just got to be clear about that. Got to be clear about that. So he said, I've never sought a bland neutrality and have consoled myself that unbiased history is yet to be written in our world. This is a labor of love that has introduced me to many exciting Americans, and it would have been interesting to meet. I have tried hard to balance opinions, present contrasting views, manage personal feelings, and uncover some truths. This is a subject that deserves further investigation and synthesis. Clearly, people and events described in one chapter or even a part of one deserve far greater study. If this effort contributes to those ends, a personal goal would have been reached. And that is from William Lauren Katz. All right. So I want to keep reading this. We're going to tap into this. We got a few other sources that we're going to tap into tonight, but I did want to read this book because it speaks to the overall theme of the episode, and I think this will be a good read. It's been something that was suggested to me a while ago. I've learned about this book for a while now, so this is just a dope opportunity for me to be able to read it and you guys be able to learn along with me. So this is chapter 1. If you know, I have a history. All right. So today, most Black Indians do not live in the forest or the broad plains of the U.S. Most do not inhabit government reservations set aside for Native Americans any more than most Indians do. To be sure, they crowd, for example, in the Shinnecock Reservation on New York's Long Island. Shout out to Long Island. Shout out to the 516 to 631. Okay. But many more walk the crowded streets of nearby New York City. They are found in abundance in the cement caverns of Boston, Chicago, Denver, New Orleans, Cleveland, and Detroit. They have made a long march from farms, woods, and ranches to skyscrapers, subways, and ghettos. Most have arrived with only a faint recollection of their adventurous rural heritage and gallant ancestors. The people they meet in school, at work, or play cannot appreciate their background because they know nothing about it. Quote, if you know I have a history, you will respect me. A black Indian student told a conference of the New York what was it? of the of the New York teachers, excuse me, the New York teachers 2 decades ago. Her words still ring true. Those who assume that a people have no history worth mentioning are likely to believe they have no humanity worth defending. And this is the reason why I go so hard about narratives and framing when it comes to history. I won't ramble because we got a lot to get to tonight. All right. And historical legacy strengthens a country and its people. Denying a people's heritage questions their legitimacy. Citizens celebrate this country's daring break from colonial rule and rejoice in the plucky Minutemen who challenged the British at Lexington and Concord. But a month before those historic skirmishes on the path to freedom, other Americans were pursuing the same goal. Slaves in Ulster County, New York, planned a massive armed rising. Perhaps they had heard the exciting patriotic talk about liberty and independence. Their liberation plot involved slaves in Kingston, Hurley, Marbletown, and upwards of 500 Native Americans. Unlike the Minutemen, their shot was not heard around the world. Their bold conspiracy never found its way into our history books. These dark people in Ulster County, like thousands of others mentioned in this book, made their contribution to freedom in their immediate relatives and friends. But other black Indians made a contribution to the entire U.S. society that deserves consideration. So, how long ago was that? They said, was it the night before they said? Anyway, whatever time that they said, you had a bunch of black Americans and Native Americans in the 18th century coming together to fight for their own independence within the country, not from another one. Okay? So that's, you got to keep that in mind. And when we talked about the slave revolts and stuff like that, understand that that's very popular and very prominent when you're talking about slave rebellions. Is you'll have other people like Native Americans and even some white men being involved with the revolts and the rebellions and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, that may be a topic going into next week, because I got a whole new list of topics that I got to put up on the whiteboard so you guys can be able to vote and stuff like that on the patreon.com/Hotep history. Go ahead and subscribe. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's get some history. So we're talking 18th century here. Okay, on the snowy night of March 5th, 1770, Crispus Attucks, a black Natick Indian, stepped dramatically into the U.S. history in Boston. So Crispus Attucks was a black native. He was a black native, okay? He was the first to fall in the Boston Massacre. Benson J. Lawson, a 19th century historian, transformed Attucks into a Nantucket Indian. To Lawson, it seemed wrong to place an Afro-American with Native American blood at the daring first moment of American independence. And it would only make sense, man. It would only make sense. This is what we were talking about. Like, HJ got a famous clip when he went on Rogan talking about how we were already here. Like economically, it only makes sense that you're going to deal with the people or enslave the people that's already here, as opposed to traveling 90 days from one continent to another one. Like, you have millions of people already here. So as far as just sensible economic reasons, yeah, you're going to deal with the population that's here. Now, don't get it fucked up. We all know that Europeans famously wiped out 90+% of the native population just due to different, diseases that they brought and all of the foreign stuff that they brought with them from Europe. So we get that. But that still doesn't, take away from the fact that the 10% that was left, or the dwindling percentage that was still around, we're going to mix with Europeans, going to mix with the black Americans and stuff like that. And this is what you get. So you have somebody like Crispus Attucks, who is black native, okay? Paul Coffey, A Dartmouth Indian with African parentage became a wealthy merchant and ship owner in early Massachusetts. He married Alice Pequit of his mother's Wampanoag Nation, but his great interest was in protecting fellow Afro Americans from discrimination in the U.S., and he became the first black man to sponsor a migration of U.S. blacks to Africa. So, again, we have different people throughout our history who have native ancestry. Okay. Now, I did disagree with any repatriation or any immigration to Africa. That's just my personal thing. But I understand that we're dealing with people who have their own autonomy. If the ancestors, if a small sect of the ancestors wanted to go to Africa or go back to Africa, that was their right. It would just be, I'm more inclined to be with the majority of black American ancestors who were like, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm staying here. I'm from here. Okay. In 1815, he personally paid for and led 38 settlers aboard his ship Traveler to Sierra Leone. Cuffy became the father of black back to Africa movements in this country. Okay. Frederick Douglass, a slave runaway with mixed African, Indian, and white ancestry, became the leading voice of black America during the Civil War in the decades that follow. His creed, quote, "If there's no struggle, there's no progress," has inspired reform and revolutionary movements ever since. Douglass's name and accomplishments now adorn most history texts. So Frederick Douglass had native ancestry. Okay. Langston Hughes, poet laureate of African Americans, like to trace his family tree back to Pocahontas. In that tree also was a man who joined John Brown's famous raid on Harper's Ferry, and another who became a Virginia congressman. Hughes, a prolific writer of poetry, plays and short stories, novels, autobiographies, and newspaper columns, became the proud voice of Harlem, New York's black community. So just more and more black native admixture here that we was dealing with. Langston Hughes photographed in 1938, like to trace back his Afro-American and Native American ancestors. Okay. Proud legacy. In the early centuries of their life in the Americas, black Indians often created a society that might have been a model for everyone. Okay. They demonstrated that there was another path through the wilderness than the one hacked out by a European lust for gold, land, and power. Their communities proved bigotry did not rise naturally from American soil, its plains and waters. Bigotry and the appetite for it were imported. They traveled the stormy Atlantic and were speedily transplanted and nourished by those who carried them over. If they had been of a mind to, Europeans might have learned something from the dark people they selfishly used. Instead, they gathered these people's precious gifts and offered promises in return. Africans and Indians followed a tradition that rarely wrote matters down, but held to verbal promises. And again, this goes back to the oral traditions and the oral historians in Black American history. A lot of the women were oral historians and oral traditionalists. They were able to, I famously say that women don't forget anything, especially black women. So when it comes down to that, it makes all of the sense. I know when it comes down from comes from the European mindset, that documentation and being able to write things down is like almost the end all be all to proving something. And I get all of that, but at the same time, you have to understand that oral traditions and oral histories are passed down and then they're acted upon. So not only are you going to be told these stories through, folklore and being able to listen to your elders speak and stuff like that, the lessons that they're going to teach you through those oral traditions and oral histories, you're going to actually implement in your real life. Okay, there's certain things that your granny told you to do that was never written down and you still do it to this very day. I'll give you an example. When I wash dishes, I have to hear the squeak because my grandmother told me that the dish is not clean unless it's squeaky clean. Because when it comes to, plates and bowls and pots and pans and stuff like that, if you can't hear the squeak, that means there's still grease on it. So you want to be able to scrub that out. That wasn't written down anywhere. That's something my grandmother told me, and I translated to pretty much everything that I clean, including my body. So again, that's just one example of what your elders would tell you to do, that you would hold near and dear to your heart and practice every day, that didn't ever need to be written down. And I know from the European perspective, it's like, oh, these are some backward people. And that's because Europeans, tend to write things down more often. Give them that. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that, it doesn't guarantee that those things are still going to be held, 50, 70, 100 years later, as opposed to keep telling these stories over and over again, passing them down generation to generation, and having those stories again be acted upon. You burning that in your memory through action is going to actually lend more to actually being, passed down, as opposed to just writing it down. Even though, as a historian, obviously I'm not against documentation. Okay. Let's see. Where we at? Oh, yeah. They met Europeans who wrote many, many things down but failed to keep their promises or treaties. Okay. What followed in the New World was a titanic European battle for the control of dark people and natural resources. Europe marched out its best soldiers to secure a continent and subdue its people. The result was unending conquest and agonizing slavery. But beyond the pain were armed black Indian communities named Hide Me and the Woods Lament for Me. I don't even know what that means. They were home for some of our earliest explorers and pioneers. Families brought up their young, constructed homes, planted and harvested crops, took care of their elderly. They traded with neighbors, instituted religion, government, justice, and planned the common defense. These settlements not only provided women with an equality and respect unheard of in European society, but elevated some to leadership. 2 colonial Brazil black Indian communities were commanded by African women, and another African maroon settlement in 1826 in Brazil was ruled by a black woman named Zephyrina, who successfully led her forces against 2 towns and plantations in Bahia. With few weapons, these alliances in the woods challenged the footholds Europeans built in the Western Hemisphere. Using guerrilla tactics that will become famous in China, in Vietnam in our own century, red and black people defeated superior numbers and better equipped foreign armies. Now, we talked about that when we were talking about this cultural subgroups, right? Remember, when it comes down to guerrilla warfare, the U.S., no matter what century, no matter what era that you're talking about, is largely ill-equipped to deal with it. Now, in 2025, they're just going to bomb the entire jungle. That's just how they're going to approach it. However, when it comes to skill for skill, strategy for strategy, tactic for tactic, they're largely unaware. We talked about this before, where it's like Florida might as well have been its own country. And them not, these guys are coming from different parts of the North, New England, Northeast area. And even if they are fighting, coming from the South, this part of the South, Florida specifically, is very swampy, very tropical. It's just like dense jungles and stuff like that. Like, you got to kind of liken it to the Amazon for real. Before Florida was developed and during the colonial era and before, it was very, very, very thick. Okay, very dense jungle type. I mean, we had jaguars and all this stuff in high numbers during this time. So if you are somebody that was born and bred in this area, you know this landscape like the back of your hand. And then if you needed to defend it against foreign powers or foreign armies, you're going to be better equipped in this terrain than some people basically invading your area. So yeah. This they managed while moving their families out of harm's way. These dark liberators often proved that European rule in the Americas amounted to a thin coat of white paint over a seething dark empire. Before Patrick Henry shouted, "Give me liberty or give me death," black Indian maroons acted on this notion. You see what I mean? They act on it. Before Thomas Jefferson wrote, "All men are created equal," black Indians turned a stirring phrase into a hard reality. Okay, before the Declaration of Independence eloquently argued for a people's revolution against an unjust authority, thousands of dark-skinned Americans have been fighting tyrants and slave hunters on 2 continents. For their audacity, black Indians faced a repression more ruthlessly cruel than any King George III imposed on the 13 original colonies. They were forced to carry on the longest, bloodiest battle for freedom in the Western Hemisphere. Repeatedly, they persuaded Europeans. They persuaded Europeans it was wiser to grant them independence, sovereignty, and liberty than to continue wars. European powers often learned this lesson late, after they had wasted lives and fortunes on the idea that these free colonies could be easily destroyed. Maroon Wars outlasted the endless conflicts between rival European states. Neither side gave nor asked any quarter, and prisoners were few. For their part, Maroons, even when captured and facing a terrible death, tried to protect their villagers. More than a century ago, a British report from Belém, Brazil, described how, quote, a captured Negro gave such an account of the difficulties and dangers of the journey to his settlement that 33 out of 40 enemy soldiers refused to accompany their captain. To prevent Africans and Native Americans from uniting, Europeans played skillfully on racial differences and ethnic rivalries. They kept the pot of animosity boiling. Whites turned Indians to slave hunters and slave owners, and Africans into Indian fighters. Light-skinned Africans were pitted against dark-skinned, free against enslaved, black Indians against pure Africans or pure Indians. Those who have put history into books have emphasized differences between Africans and Native Americans. For example, they have stressed that Europeans encountered Indians as distinct individuals and members of proud nations, and Africans as nameless slaves. Little mention is made of the enslavement of Native Americans, and nothing is said about the cultural similarities between the two dark peoples. In 1984, scholar Theda Purdue said, quote, by emphasizing the actual, exaggerated, and imagined differences between Africans and Indians, whites successfully masked the cultural similarities of the two races as well as their mutual exploitation by whites. Now, when it comes down to pitting the two groups against each other, okay, I get all of that. But I do reject the idea that somebody can make you or force you into being a slave owner. I reject that. I reject that outright. Either you want to own slaves or you don't. Okay? Either you want to own slaves or you don't. Either you don't see any reason, incentive to own slaves, or you do. That's as simple as that. So while I can understand that, there may have been some pitting one against each other, which is, obvious, I'm not going to sit here and put all of the blame on white people. That's insane. That is insane. I'm not doing that. I get this book has its own narrative, its own framing and stuff like that. And, it is what it is. I'm going to, chew the food, but spit out the bones. But spit out the bones is what I'm saying. And a narrative such as whites made them do it, I'm rejecting that. Sorry, I'm rejecting that. Either you want to own slaves or you don't. Like that's all. That is all. All right, so here we go. In the United States, Africans became central in the exploration of the new nation and the development of the crucial fur trade. Because they were more likely to build a binding trust among Native Americans, whites employed them as negotiators, and they did not disappoint. Africans, like the Native Americans, cherished their own trustworthiness and saw promises and treaties as bonds never to be broken. Okay. In the 19th century, a black Indian friendship limped on despite onslaughts from white racial policies destructive to both peoples. It survives still in the legends of Native American nations and in the stories and faces of many dark people. Okay. What we got? Frontier myth and reality. Generations of young minds have been trained to think of life on the American frontier as a saga of white gallantry. Daring pioneers probed the wilderness. John Wayne cowboys whipped Indians to give us the USA. Children of every race rejoiced in this version of the frontier served up each Saturday afternoon at the movies. In the real wilderness, two dark people met and often united. They were not driven together by any special affinity based on a similar skin color. Their meetings were unwittingly arranged by their enemies, the Europeans, who exploited both. But in the retelling of our Western history, no one learned that Africans and Native Americans separately and Bill Pickett, we know about Bill Pickett, was born to a black Cherokee Oklahoma family long before Oklahoma became a state. See? More black more black Indians or native blacks together fought bravely for an American they knew was also theirs. Perhaps their story was trampled underfoot by their hard-riding European foes. Pause. With hard riding. In 1774, Patriot James Madison wrote about a slave revolt. Quote, "It is prudent such attempts should be concealed as well as suppressed." See? Remember when I was telling y'all about Tulsa and how they underreported white deaths? They did the same thing with slave revolts and slave rebellions because they didn't want black Americans, free or enslaved, to get emboldened by their moves. They showed all of the black people who were caught and then subsequently hung or executed in some way to, pretty much deter any further revolts or rebellions. But they also did not want to let the general public know how many white people had been killed or died for that very reason, for the same reason, to keep the opposition demoralized, okay? The black Indian story has been treated as though it were a massive slave rebellion, see? Its final burial came at the hands of a later white generation who shaped a heritage for books and movies that ended all claims but white ones. The frontier omissions lie at the heart of our cherished national myth. The tale of the wilderness stands as the greatest American story ever told. It is the way we wish to see ourselves. Quote, "A frontier people," said President Woodrow Wilson, "is so far the central and determining fact of our natural history. The West is the great word of our history. The Western has been the type and master of our American life. Creators of this West did not want it sullied by a black presence or subject to Indian claims." So again, when it comes down to this, I want to make sure that I'm not tripping. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because if that was a part of his quote, then you already know, because Woodrow Wilson famously resegregated the White House and government jobs and stuff like that after he pretty much made a bunch of empty promises to black voters. So it would have, if he would have said the whole creators of this West did not want it sullied by a black presence or subject to Indian claims, I would have believed that for sure. The frontier went from gritty reality to uplifting truth and finally to national legend. In the process, entire races disappeared from it. Its cast of heroic characters included only whites. If Europeans bravely conquered continents, it was not necessary or desirable to show black and red people defying white authority to build their own communities in the wilderness. Racial stereotypes long pictured non-whites as cowardly or childlike. How could red or black men be shown creating a culture in the wilderness, bravely rescuing their families and riding off into the sunset? There was another problem introducing a set of dark frontier heroes. Their love of liberty thrust them against some sainted U.S. figures. Thomas Jefferson, speaking of Indians, said, quote, "We would never stop pursuing them with war while one remained on the face of the earth." Jeez. Damn. Andrew Jackson, the first great Democrat to reach the White House, was first in a long line of candidates to win the presidency, boasting of his Indian fighting skills. He waged a cruel war against Indian men, women, and children. He staunchly defended slavery and, like Jefferson, owned slaves. To save their families, black Indians had to fight off posses and armed armies launched by their national heroes. Distorting racial history, as teachers know, injures dark children. They live with a muted heritage. Despite black Indian contributions to this land, neither black nor Indian children nor their parents have an awareness of this legacy. Like whites, Native Americans learned in school that Africans were contented slaves and had no fighting traditions, certainly none that allied them with Indians. For their part, Afro-Americans are aware of Indians in their family trees, but they probably assume that, like the whites lurking there, they are mere intruders. Such inaccurate beliefs hide a heritage worth exploring. Further, they divide people today who could have benefit from unity. When black Americans have pursued their genealogy, oh, come on, they have focused on their African roots and sought a meaningful black heritage. Children of the black awareness of the 1960s have rarely cared to mention an Indian ancestry because this might be seen as a denial of their African origins and the value of blackness. All this is part of the racial nightmare we have inherited. With her unusual perception, precision, and pride, Rosa Fay, a black Seminole living in Brackettville, Texas in 1943, clarified her people's background for pioneer researcher Kenneth W. Porter. Quote, we called people. I don't say we don't. We called people. I don't say we don't have has no Injun blood, because we has. But we ain't no Injuns. We's called people, like colored. Got you. It's so funny to go hear from that, like the if you juxtapose that between 1943 and like in the 1990s, where you got Indian your family and all that other stuff, like you had the ancestors denying it in certain instances. So that's very interesting. That's very interesting. You dig? Let's check the chat. Well, let's finish the page, then we'll check the chat. Other Americans would benefit from re-examination of their family trees and a new look at their biological inheritance. The process may yield wonder and gratification where once grief or skepticism ruled. The ancestors of black Indians often created or died in the attempt in American sisterhood and brotherhood we have tried to attain. They did this under terrible circumstances in the face of armed opposition. Had we paid proper attention to their unique model of friendship and loyalty, our common American history from Hudson Bay to Cape Horn might have been different, more peaceful. Our racial problems might have been more easily solved. Even at this late date, we owe ourselves a rereading of this fascinating legacy. Perhaps we can still learn from and act on its lessons. So let's check the chat. That was chapter 1. Cliff says, great info, Hotep. Appreciate you. Shout out to Cliff, man. Shout out to Cliff. Where's the new builds at, bro? We trying to see the new schematics. We trying to see what's going on over there in Houston, bro. What you building? We got to know what you building over there, B. Got to know what you building, B. You should do a live on Creole someday. That would be very interesting. CWJ, we've done that when we did the cultural subgroup, so go check that episode out. But I ain't gonna lie, so many of these topics rather bears repeating or going and doing a part 2 about them. Like, that's how deep this history goes. Like, I tell y'all all of the time, when it comes to Hotep history, I am going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I'm going to be researching Black American history, publishing Black American historical books and all this other stuff for the rest of my life. This is what I'm called to do. I promise you, I am never, ever, ever going to be able to cover everything. There's going to be so many things that I miss out on. Because you got to remember, as a historian, I still have to document the people who are making history in my century, in my lifetime. So all of the major, figures, events, and all of that other stuff, I have to document that for people 100 years, 200 years from now, so they can get this information. So I have my work cut out for me. And trust and believe, there are going to be things that we talked about over on Hotep History Live that we're going to double back on. That's a fact. Before we go to the next chapter, though, we have another picture here, the Navajo hunting party, photographed by G.B. Whittick in the 1880s in front of their reservation trading post, demonstrate the U.S. mixture of two dark races. All right. So this is going to be like our grounded book for the episode, but I do want to get into some other stuff. So let's see. Let's get into, what's this? So this book is called Black Slaves, Indian Masters. Okay. Let's get into this. Let's see what we got to say about this one. You feel me? I like to bring the sources. Know I like to bring the sources. What's going on, Memphis? Memphis in the chat, my boy. You feel me? Let's see what we got. So they have a digitized table of contents. This was like a remastered book. It is a secondary source, but it has primary sources in it, of course. So let's see. We can bounce around. We don't have to do just chapter 1. We could start with chapter 1. I wouldn't be mad with it. But we got enslaved people, missionaries and slaveholders, Christianity, colonialism and struggles over slavery, slave resistance, sectional crisis, political fractionalism, and antebellum Indian territory. Let's see. Emancipation and the conflicts over black people's citizenship rights and Indian nation sovereignty. Let's just do this. Let's do chapter 1. Let's do chapter 1 and see what we get. See what information that we get. You feel me? Shout out to those who watching on Twitter too, man. I'm so glad I get to go live on Twitter. All right, so chapter 1, Black Slaves, Indian Masters, Race, Gender, and Power in the Deep South. So let's get into it. In the early 19th century, can y'all see it? Let me zoom in a little bit more. There we go. So y'all can follow along. You feel me? In the early 19th century, so that's the early 1800s, Choctaw and Chickasaw men and women embraced the idea of acquiring black people as property, equating blackness with lifelong hereditary and degraded servitude. First in Mississippi, and then after their removal in the 1830s to Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, wealthy and middling Choctaws borrowed, bartered, and paid cash on the barrel to buy enslaved black people from nearby white slave owners, professional slave traders, and each other. So while I understand the narrative and the framing of black Indians, that book is more so talking about like the unity between black Americans and Native Americans and stuff like this. This one is obviously going to be a little bit more tumultuous. It's going to be more about how Native Americans owned black people. So I wanted to give a full just 360 view of this from the historical context. So let's get it on. Through the antebellum period, growing numbers of Choctaws and Chickasaws calculated their personal wealth by counting the slaves they had purchased. So you got the sources here. The practice of owning people of African descent as property, slaves, emerged in large measure from Choctaws and Chickasaws' heightened participation in the antebellum market economy and, like other market-oriented endeavors taken up by Southern Indians, altered social and economic relations within Indian communities and among Indians and their white neighbors. But buying, selling, and owning African descended people as property was not simply like other markets practiced that took root in southern Indian nations. Slaveholding and the associated transactions of profiting from owning and exploiting black people's labor and reproduction required that native peoples engage decidedly new meanings of property, race, and gender that had lasting consequences for Indians and African Americans alike. Slaveholding Choctaws and Chickasaws did not blindly adopt and imitate the racial ideology of their Euro-American neighbors in Mississippi, but instead crafted and refined their own ideologies of racial identification and differentiation that reflected the particular social, economic, and political conditions of their time and place. And this is the reason why I said what I said about the previous book, where I'm not about to lay all of this at the feet of white people. Like, these are grown men and women with their own agency, with their own autonomy, making their own decisions. So not only does this book say that, they, had their own thing, but it defies what the first book says. And this is the reason why it's good to read more than one book on a particular subject, because now this source is basically saying that, all of this started with the Choctaws and the Chickasaws, and they did not simply blindly just do what the white people did. No, they had their own way of slavery, because you have to understand, I know the narrative that the mainstream, histories have given us is that it wasn't until the white man came to this continent to where like war started, happening among people and stuff like that. But you have to understand that natives were warring with each other before, during, and after, the white man got here. As a matter of fact, that was where the white man even came in. He was able to, use the divide and conquer method based upon these tribes or these people already being at odds with each other. Excuse me. The Comanche tribe were a vicious tribe. Like, take no prisoners type of warriors. They were all over the plains, all over the over the country and stuff like that, taking land from other Native Americans, warring with other Native Americans. Like, it was not just like, sweet peaceful time and all this other stuff. It was never like that. War is a part of human existence, fam. Like, it's not exclusive to any one race or any one people or any one continent. These Native American tribes were warring with each other constantly, and some, like the Comanche, even created reputations for themselves because of how brutal they were. You dig what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, it's easy to be like, oh, the white man, for sure. And I'm not absolving the white man for what he did. Absolutely. But what I am going to say is I'm going to be objective about this here. Like, I'm going to be objective and say, no, it wasn't because the white man. It was like, no, what the white man did was able to exploit and take advantage of the wars that were already going on. And then, of course, finessing and stealing and killing and all of the things that go along with it. But as far as morality, no, these people were not more moral than the European American that was here and stuff like that. They resorted to trickery. They resorted to lying. They broke treaties as well. This was not just a white invention like the first book alludes to or explicitly states that, these two groups of dark people would have been united had it not been for the white European man. It's like, I reject that. Like, we have plenty of primary sources that talk about how these tribes were warring with each other and stuff like that. So while there were more peaceful tribes, like the Comanche were some of the more brutal, but from what I read, like the Apache were pretty cool. There was some Creek nations that were pretty cool and stuff like that, but everybody had the proclivity or the ability or capability of violence. Like, you can't have a civilization without it. You need men of fighting age. That's why they call it fighting age. Like, you need men of fighting age to be ready and willing to get violent for the protection of your people. So it's not like there's no violence at all. Like, that makes no sense. Like, even, just hunting in itself is violence. So yeah, I reject the whole narrative of these peace-loving natives and stuff like that who was just, picking berries and shit like that. And these ships came along on the shores of America and just took over violently. Like, no, there were wars, like wars upon wars. Plenty of white men died. Plenty of native people died. And then, of course, you add in all of the biological warfare that went into all of this stuff, disease and smallpox blankets and, all of this different stuff. Like, 100%, I don't consider it stolen. I consider it conquered. Just being honest with you, I have a very objective view of it. And I'm not a bleeding heart type of person, especially historically. And I'm pretty sure you guys know that about me so far. Like, you haven't seen me. I talk about slavery the way I do. You feel me? I talk about what I talk about the way I do just because I understand humans. Before you even get into the historical side of it, you got to understand the motivations of humans. And greed, envy, jealousy, gluttony, all of these things are part of the human experience. And you're going to see these characteristics be shown throughout any culture, through any part of the world, through any part of world history. So I'm just not that hung up about like, yo, this is specific to this race. They only do this. This race only does that or whatever. It's like, no, I reject that. I believe in the human experience and humans all being fallible people, no matter what shade of color that they are or what ethnicity they come, have to be happen to be belonging to. So let's see. Racial categories, which encompass not only blackness but also conceptions of Indianness, never heard that term, and whiteness, were never static but were made and remade from the late 18th century through the antebellum era. During this time, Choctaws and Chickasaws engaged new forms of property ownership, personal wealth, and shifting gender roles, and also contended with the mounting local and federal assaults on Indian sovereignty and land title in the southern states. Chattel slavery did not emerge in the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations until the early years of the 19th century, but neither the institution of human bondage nor its bedrock ideology of racial hierarchy materialized out of thin air in Indian communities. Beginning in the 17th century, generations of Choctaw and Chickasaw men and women became well acquainted with the social and economic dynamics of the European colonial slave societies taking shape around them. This chapter begins with an overview of indigenous practices of unfreedom and captivity and Indian enslavement in the French and English colonies. The aim is not to suggest a clear and unbroken trajectory from captivity to slavery, nor is the intention to imply that antebellum chattel slavery in the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations was a largely benign variation of older indigenous forms of unfreedom. Unfreedom is crazy. Unfreedom? I have never heard that term in my life. Unfreedom. Like what, son? Unfreedom? Okay, whatever you say. Rather, the brief discussion of indigenous captivity and Indians' own enslavement by European colonists is meant to suggest a historical narrative that recognizes a meaningful and shifting native presence in the long history of American chattel slavery. Through the first quarter of the century, Choctaws and Chickasaws gained a familiarity with slavery in the French and British colonies that was intimate and brutal. By the time the French built their posts at Biloxi and Mobile at the turn of the 17th century, okay, so this is going into the 1600s. You feel me? English traders from Carolina had already made their way along Cherokee and Creek paths to the Tombigbee River and the Chickasaw villages hundreds of miles west of the eastern seaboard. European colonial authorities pursued trade alliances with southern Indians as a part of an imperial strategy to advance their own business interests while constraining their European rivals' territorial and commercial expansion. So again, you have a bunch of Europeans being able to because there is no one homogenous group where everybody just gets along all of the time. Like there's wars between Europeans, as we know in Europe. There's wars between Black Americans. There's wars between Native Americans. Like nobody is just one homogenous group of people that don't have violence inside of their ranks, don't have rivalry inside of their ranks. You dig what I'm saying? Like just how it goes. So now you have some Europeans rivaling with other Europeans and then using particular tribes or certain nations to be able to have an advantage economically in the fur trades or, whatever they have to offer, getting land, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Late 17th century and early 18th century English alliances with the Chickasaws established Chickasaw male warriors as commercial slave traders. And within a few decades, Chickasaws earned the lasting reputation of being fearsome and superior warriors. Starting in 1702, French authorities, seeking to thwart the expansion of British Indian trade farther into the lower Mississippi Valley, negotiated alliances with Choctaws that included provisions for the purchase of Indian slaves. So again, you got the English settlers, you got the French settlers using the natives against each other. Like, listen, you got the Chickasaws, then fuck it, I got the Choctaws. And we're going to be able to, circumvent what you guys have going on when it comes down to, the trade alliances that you guys have made. Because at the end of the day, these are foreigners. At the end of the day, they have no real lay of the land. They just got here. This is the 18th century now. We started in the 17th century, which again is the 1600s. So again, this is all relatively new for these people. Okay. British and French traders obtained Indian slaves by tapping into existing indigenous practices of raiding and captive taking. I told you. Choctaws and Chickasaws had long seized male and female captives during wartime as a means of obtaining spiritual and physical replacements for loved ones lost in war. Like other native peoples, such as the Cherokees, Choctaws, and Chickasaws, usually put male captives to death after a period of ritualized torture. Ritualized torture. Okay? On one occasion in 1752, for example, Choctaws whipped a captive Chickasaw warrior for 3 days and planned on burning him to death on the 4th day, but he escaped. In the same year, Chickasaws tortured 2 captive Choctaw warriors in, quote, a most barbarous manner, taking of their scalps and cutting out their bowels before they were dead. Like, it was like that, for real. It was really like that. I really want y'all to understand that whatever PBS version of the natives you got when you were a kid, I promise you, they didn't tell you about the torture. They didn't tell you about the slavery. They didn't tell you about the seizing of lands, the killing of men, the taking women, and all that other stuff. Like, it was crazy. Let's go. Captive women and children were spared such a bloody fate and instead were adopted into their captors' kin group to bolster the population and symbolically replace those who had been killed in war. And this is again going to be a big part of the relationship between natives and black Americans as it pertains to having native ancestry. We can't act like this wasn't a part of it. If you had a bunch of black American slaves, female or women slaves, let's not act dumb here. Okay, I'm on YouTube and I gotta be a little bit more mindful of the language that I use, and so it's all good, but one can understand what I'm getting at, what I'm insinuating, and what I'm putting down, right? So because clan membership and descent followed the female line, Choctaw and Chickasaw women, especially those who had lost kin in war, bore the responsibility of determining captives' fate. They decided whether a man should be spared from execution, in which women and children should be adopted as, and which women and children should be adopted as kin or held as subordinates or servants. Armed and compensated by colonial authorities, Indian warriors in the lower Mississippi Valley increasingly sought captives not to avenge the loss of kin, but to gain valuable objects, the captives themselves, that could be exchanged for European manufacturers such as duffels, guns, metalwares, liquor, and jewelry. Through much of the 18th century, European traders supplied these goods to Choctaw and Chickasaw headmen, local leaders who wielded political and spiritual power in their communities. Ethnohistorians have shown that in the Southeast, Indian headmen adopted long-standing indigenous diplomatic protocols to accommodate trade and military alliances with colonial partners. Powerful headmen had long achieved their status, established their spiritual power, gained the respect of their communities, and confirmed their authority through demonstrated success as hunters and warriors. Leaders bore the responsibility of distributing resources, the bounty of a deer hunt, and also communal food crops, and thus demonstrated their power through the circulation of goods rather than their accumulation. So the circulation rather than accumulation. So my ability to spread love to all of my dead thugs, you feel me? Like that type of thing, like being able to, feed as many people as opposed to accumulating the resources. In the 18th century, okay, this is still the 1700s, Choctaw and Chickasaw headmen, like their Creek and Cherokee counterparts, received trade goods from colonial allies and oversaw their distribution to warriors, their families, and the other members of the community. From the vantage of native peoples, foreigners and the goods they bore possessed spiritual power, including the potential for chaos. Local leaders thus sought to rein in and access that power through their diplomatic relationships with outsiders and also through the circulation of exotic European goods amongst their people. So again, when we are reading the first book and the first source is telling us how, the white man is actually their enemy and stuff like that, you have to understand that that's not how they viewed them by and large. They looked at these men as potential customers. They looked at these men as people that they can actually get things from and be able to trade with and do business with. And they voluntarily did it. Because again, as far as humans are concerned, you're going to have some of the same, or if not the exact same human characteristics that everybody else has, fam. You have ambitions, you have, certain dreams or passions that you have. You're going to be motivated by greed or envy or justice or whatever it is, just like anybody else. Now your interpretation of those different things, or how act it out, your execution of those things may be different, but the motivations are going to be largely the same. So they looked at these European goods as exotic. So yeah. So this chapter, I'm not seeing many of the Black American ancestors, but we'll keep reading and see what's going on. It's still it's a good chapter so far. British officials in Carolina armed and rewarded Chickasaw and Creek warrior parties for destroying Choctaw settlements and turning over Choctaw captives for enslavement in the British colonies. In 1708, Carolina trader and diplomat Thomas Nairn found that the Chickasaws enjoyed, quote, the greatest ease, taking enemy captives to quote, get a booty from the British. Hey, yo, knock it off. Pause. French authorities, in turn, compensated Choctaws for the Indian captives that they seized. In 1721, for example, during a period of warfare between Choctaw and Chickasaw settlements, Louisiana authorities sought to, quote, incite Choctaw warriors to do well by paying handsomely for every Chickasaw scalp and each of the quote slaves that they bring in. So listen, they just getting in where they fit in when it comes to this. They just play in the middle. Like, oh, you warring with them, they warring with you. Well, let's get in where we fit in and be like, well, listen, we'll trade you whatever, metals, liquor, whatever it is. Give us some of your enemies. Don't kill them. You know what I'm saying? But bring them over to us, and we can use them. We can use them as our slaves. Big Who with the $100 super chat. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you so much. They say good stuff. Faux show. That's what I'm talking about, man. Man, the super chats is blinging tonight, man. Y'all making me feel good. Y'all making me feel like I'm worth something. You feel me? That's what I'm talking about. Hold on, man. We getting to it tonight. We getting to it tonight. I'm on the right path. These are the biggest super chats that I've gotten in my career so far. What's up? What's up? Talk to me. Shout out to y'all in the chat, man. I'm hyped. I'm super hyped. I guess I should just shut the hell up and keep reading. And that's what I'm talking about. All right. Thank y'all, man. Keep the super chats coming, man, for sure. Here we go. Chickasaw and Choctaw warriors target any number of indigenous peoples within an approximately 200-mile radius of their settlements in northeastern and central eastern Mississippi. These slaving expeditions wreaked havoc on indigenous communities and disrupting local economic and demographic stability and precipitating lasting changes in the organization of local and regional populations. Colonial intrusions also dramatically altered Indians' motives for taking captives and the consequence of capture. Colonial intrusions also dramatically altered Indians' motives for taking captives and the consequences of capture. So I, again, will concede to the fact that Europeans is 100% doing the European thing. Like, they're doing the European thing and getting in where they can fit in when it comes to these two warring factions, for sure. For sure. You dig what I'm saying? Again, I am just not going to lay this responsibility just at one people's feet. Like, that just wouldn't make any sense. It just wouldn't make any sense, man. Okay. Let's get into it. Once in the hands of British traders, Indian captives, mainly women, were taken to Charleston and sold to planters who enslaved them alongside African women and men on South Carolina and Barbados rice and sugar plantations. The predominance of Indian women among the captives sold to British planters is suggested in the inventory of the slaves owned in 1715 by John Wright. 15 black men, 17 women, of whom 13 were identified as Indians. Okay? They were identified as Indians. A pamphlet promoting settlement in South Carolina instructed Anglo-American men of modest means to purchase a good Negro, quote, a good Negro man and a good Indian woman. Now, why would you do that? This is a pamphlet promoting how to get settled in this state, or in this colony rather, right? And the best thing that you can do is get you a strong Negro man and a strong Indian woman. Why? For breeding, perhaps? And this is in the 18th century. Okay, this is in the 1700s that this is happening. Okay, so again, when it comes down to, I know that people pejoratively call them pretendians and stuff like that, but if we're just being accurate about the history, if in 18th century white people are telling other white people to say, hey, you need a Negro man and an Indian woman, and then they keep, mixing with each other, the ending of slavery happens and they continue to mix. I don't understand why people are so shocked that they're going to be, Native American ancestry in their blood. It only makes logical sense. You feel me? So let's see. Wealthier colonists were directed to acquire African men along with 15 Indian women to work in the field, and another 3 Indian women as cooks, and to attend to household business. According to historian Alan Gillay, an estimated 24,000 to 51,000 Indians, including approximately 2,000 Choctaws, were sold into the British slave trade between 1670 and 1715. During this period, Carolina enjoyed a lively trade in Indian slaves, as the number of colonies exported Indian slaves exceeded the number of its imported African slaves. So this is, again, going back to what me and HJ were talking about. Like, they were already here, fam. You don't necessarily need to import a bunch of Africans. 5% of all of the transatlantic slave trade Africans made it to the United States, or the colonies, which are now known as the United States. 5%. So 95% were all throughout the Caribbean, South America, mainly Brazil was, like, I think, the largest. So you had the largest being in Brazil, and then the least being in the country that we now call the United States. And look, this is what they're saying, and this is 1670. So this is the 17th century. Okay? And they're saying that, there were more Indian slaves than imported African slaves. Come on now. Beginning in the 1720s, the colonial trade in Indian captives / slaves quickly gave way to a thriving transatlantic slave trade in enslaved Africans. The number of enslaved Africans imported to North America swelled in the middle of the 18th century, with close to 19,000 Africans enslaved in Louisiana by 1769 and nearly 40,000 in South Carolina by 1750. The extensive transatlantic and domestic importation of black slaves into the lower Mississippi Valley meant that the black population expanded alongside the burgeoning white population. Indeed, like South Carolina, Mississippi had a black majority that remained in place well into the 19th century. And then we now know, when it comes down to the stats, those are the 2 states that had the most slave owners per capita. You had 49% in Mississippi and 46% in South Carolina, respectively. Okay? So anybody of slave owning capability, you feel me, had slaves, basically. Half the entire state had slaves. That's how it was. And you can see, if you have a large concentration of these people, okay, whether it be black Americans or Native Americans, you're going to see a lot more of that ownership there. Could it be that because of the amount, and there was a majority of black Americans there, that they more than likely gave a slight discount on the price of slaves, which made it a little bit more accessible? Could be. You know what I'm saying? Couldn't be. All I know is that when it comes down to South Carolina and comes down to Mississippi, those 2 states per capita had the most slave owners. Okay? So let's get into it. With this dramatic expansion of the enslaved African population, Choctaws and Chickasaws' roles in the context of colonial slavery shifted. Increasingly, enslaved Indians and also the children born to enslaved Indian and African unions were described in racial terms of blackness, a reflection of the hardening association of blackness and enslavement. No longer desired as slaves by colonial planters, Indians were instead often pressed into service as slave catchers, policing both the territorial divide between the colonies and Indian country and the ever more rigid distinctions of race and status that define colonial slave societies. So basically, we got more and more niggas now, so the need for you as a slave has decreased. However, we can still use you as people that are going to catch the slaves. You have the lay of the land. There's not too many places that they can hide that you can't find them in and stuff like that. And again, while I understand the influence, again, I'm not about to take the autonomy away from anybody. I don't take the autonomy away from the Africans who sold other Africans into slavery. I don't take the autonomy away from any party when it comes down to history. Point blank, period. Okay? These are choices that are being made. Period. All right. Hoping to preclude any concerted acts of resistance or rebellion among Africans and Indians, Carolina and Louisiana lawmakers routinely demanded that their Indian allies catch and surrender runaway African slaves, often including this requirement into their treaties and diplomatic agreements with Southern Native peoples. So again, when it comes down to this stuff, this is signed, sealed, delivered. These are written agreements that, we will subjugate the Negro along with you to be able to keep whatever lands, whatever agreement that we have. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to ride. It is what it is. So in 1726, French officials urged Louisiana's lawmakers to, quote, take prompt and sweeping action against runaway African slaves by employing neighborhood Indians to capture them. Not long after England gained control of the French territory east of the Mississippi River, Choctaws and Chickasaws received the following directive at a 1765 assembly with the English governor of the newly designated West Florida. Quote, we farther expect you will agree to bring in any Negroes who may desert their master's service, for which a proper reward will be allowed to the person who shall execute this service. So again, taking them incentives. Though Indians generally had little choice but to follow French and British authorities' demands that they capture and return fugitive slaves, they were never simply hapless pawns in a colonial game of dividing and conquering subjugated peoples. This is what I'm saying. You have a choice. I'm not going to read about how y'all was giving the Europeans hell in Florida and giving the Europeans hell across the plains, giving the Europeans hell all across, the country, and then now all of a sudden, we gotta catch niggas. Like, we gotta. What did you expect for us to do? It's like, no, you chose this. They were never simply hapless pawns in a colonial game of dividing and conquering subjugated peoples. To the contrary, many Southern Indians routinely discerned opportunities to pursue their own interests while making good on their commitments to the colonial allies. This is well illustrated by Choctaw warriors' tactical responses to the 1729 Natchez attack on Fort Rosalie, a French outpost along the eastern banks of the Mississippi River, just north of New Orleans. In the winter of 1729, Natchez Indians in Louisiana, distressed by the spread of disease and alcohol that too often accompanied the expansion of French settlement and had diminished by the Natchez population by half since the arrival of the French, attacked the nearby French settlers at Fort Rosalie. Now, again, this is what I was talking about. They're just simply off the biological differences, the things that they're bringing from Europe. Okay, the diseases that they're bringing from Europe, and whatever they got going on, their clothes, their cloths, and their sicknesses, whatever they got going on, bringing it to the continent, and then that just automatically killing a bunch of native people. It's foreign to them, so it's killing them off the rip, off the dribble. It's killing them. That's not even counting the wars. That's not even counting, when you're taking strategic, methods against, particular nations or particular tribes for your own means. You dig? But as you can see, they were warring. Like, yo, half our people have died. It's 1729. Half our people are dead. Half our people are dead. We got to do something about this. So they attacked the French. The raiding parties killed about 240 French men, women, and children and seized about 50 French women, along with approximately 300 enslaved Africans. Let's see what they did with them. Because it sounds like they kept them. Because they could have freed them, right? Could have freed them. But let's see what they did. French commanders of the besieged fort reported that the Natchez warriors, quote, did no harm to the Negroes, having them feast on the cattle of the French, intending to go and sell them later to the English of Carolina. Come on. They understood, like, yo, these, like, nah, we ain't about to kill them. They got value. You feel me? They got value. We can sell them. Nah, don't kill them. Let's give them some food. We'll bring them with us back to North Carolina. You feel me? Or South Carolina. 3 African captives who escaped from the Natchez corroborated this account, informing French authorities that their captors had intended to deliver them to the English allied Chickasaws for sale to Carolina slave traders. Not long after the attack, French authorities dispatched their Choctaw allies to retaliate against the Natchez by sacking their village and retrieving the African captives. Like the Natchez, Choctaw warriors calculated the Africans' value in the context of colonial slavery. They assessed their own ability to use the recovered captives to tip the balance of power in their trade and diplomatic relations with the French. So now the natives are looking at the black Americans as bargaining chips. Like, we have this much or these many slaves that we can trade, or this is a part of our assets. This is a part of our portfolio as a tribe. Like, this is how they're viewing them. You feel me? Choctaw leaders thus held out for favorable ransoms before handing over the recaptured Africans. So they got captured by one tribe. I want to say the Chickasaws first. Okay. The Chickasaws took them from the French, and then the French to go sell to the British, and then the French hired the Choctaw, and the Choctaw was like, I bet we'll go get them. You feel me? But then he was like, you know what? You wanted these African slaves for a reason. You wanted these black slaves for a reason. So now it's like, hold on. Let's hold out and see what they offer us. You feel me? It's like asking the plug what you can do for them. Like, yo, this is what we got. What can you do for us? Bargaining chips. Okay. One Choctaw leader, for example, informed the French that he would not, quote, return the Negroes who had been captured from the Natchez, until the French supplied him with goods, quote, at the English prices. Come on now. Alibaman Mingo, a prominent Choctaw leader of the Chickasaw towns, the southernmost of the principal Choctaw divisions, and one that had been battered by Chickasaw raiders, stood firm when demanding compensation. He maintained that his warriors would only relinquish the Africans after he had received, quote, 4 pieces of Limburg cloth, besides a coat, a gun, a white blanket. He asking for blankets? Crazy. And many more items that the French calculated as goods in proportion to their worth for each Negro. So I'm letting you know right now, they were terrible. Like, just off of what they're demanding and the historical context, it kind of lets us know that they were kind of terrible at these types of negotiations. You feel me? Like, they were terrible at it. Like, this is what you're asking for, bro? Hold on. 4 pieces of Limburg cloth, besides a coat, a gun, and a blanket, and many more items that the French calculated as goods in proportion to their worth for each Negro. So, yes, I get that you're asking this. Let's just say you're asking for 300 guns. I mean, okay, if you're asking this in proportion for each Negro, then okay. If you're doing this like so 4 pieces of Limburg cloth, what is that? What is Limburg cloth? We gotta look that up. Limburg. Okay. So is that's what this is? Got it. Okay, got it. It's just a type of cloth. Okay, fine. Okay, so if you're asking if it's 300 slaves and you're asking for that, that means it's 1,200 pieces of Limburg cloth, 300 coats, 300 guns, and 300 blankets, and then three. So if you multiplying it by 300, okay. Ah, no acreage. You asking for no land? I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Caught up in the web of geopolitical alliances, and enmities, enmity. Excuse me. Oh Jesus, my tongue be so tired. Enmities, that linked Choctaws and Chickasaw to the French and British colonies, enslaved African women and men became valuable objects of exchange in Choctaw and Chickasaw trade and diplomatic relations with colonial authorities. Records of the Choctaw headmen negotiations with the French suggest that their reasons for holding on to the African captives went beyond simply improving their bargaining position and point to the complex genesis of chattel slavery among Southern Indians. Some Choctaws retained the African captives to use as servants in their own villages. One Choctaw leader, quote, Little Chief of the Yellow Canes, indicated that he intended to hold on to his captives, quote, for the purpose of serving his warriors. As late as April 1730, French authorities learned that Choctaw warriors, quote, had carried away a number of Negroes to their country. Notably, Choctaw warriors retained African men and not women to be their servants, which was a change from the previous custom in Indian raiding and captive taking. The African men held by Choctaw warriors endured physical hardships and violence that rivaled the onerous conditions of enslavement under French masters. In 1731, 3 African men under the command of Alibaman Mingo sought out the French authorities while en route to Mobile. The men asked to be reclaimed by the French because they explained, quote, the Indians make us carry some packages which exhausts us, mistreat us much, and have taken from us our clothing. See, one of the things that I read was that, and this is from the autobiography of Henry Bibb. So do I not have that up here? I thought I had it up here. There we go. We can go to his joint. Because I typed in Indian. He was sold to Indians. Yeah, here we go. Yep. So let's go to this primary source. This is his autobiography. So this is his words about his life. All right, so let's zoom in. Boom, yeah. See what he had to say. Like it was kind of crazy. Let's see. During the races, there was a very wealthy half Indian of that tribe who became much attached to me and had some notion of buying me after hearing that I was for sale, being a slaveholder. The idea struck me rather favorable for several reasons. First, I thought I should stand a better chance to get away from an Indian than from a white man. Second, he wanted me only for a kind of body servant to wait on him, and in this case, I knew that I should fare better than I should in the field. And my owners also told me that it would be an easy place to get away from. I took their advice for fear I might not get another chance so good as that, and prevailed on the man to buy me. So he convinced this Indian dude to buy him. He paid them $900 in gold and silver for me. I saw the money counted out. After the purchase was made, the sportsman, that was his previous owner, got me off to one side, and according to promise, they gave me a part of the money and directions on how to get there from Canada, get from there to Canada. So it's like this white man sold this black man into bondage of the Native American, but then also gave him some bread from the sale and then told him how to escape the Native American. Like, it's crazy. They also advised me how to act until I got a good chance to run away. I was to embrace the earliest opportunity of getting away before they should become acquainted with me. I was never to let it be known where I was from, nor where I was born. I was to act quite stupid and ignorant. And when I started, I was to go up the boundary line between the Indian Territory and the states of Arkansas and Missouri, and this would fetch me out on the Missouri River near Jefferson City, the capital of Missouri. I was to travel at first by night and to lay by in daylight until I got out of danger. The same afternoon that the Indian bought me, he started with me to his residence, which was 50 or 60 miles distant. And so great was his confidence in me that he entrusted me to carry his money. What? The amount must have been at least $500, which was all in gold and silver. And when we stopped overnight, the money and the horses were all left in my charge. So, again, when I was doing the episode about black towns, there was beef. There was beef between black Americans and Native black Americans in Oklahoma specifically. So you had a lot of black towns being operated in Oklahoma. And a lot of the Creek Nations, they had a bunch of black Americans in the Creek Nations. They were Creek Nation Native black Americans. And they didn't necessarily get along with a lot of the people coming from the plantations. A lot of them came from, Native American slavery, and it was different. And from what I can see just from the historical context, a lot of black Americans preferred to be enslaved under Native Americans as opposed to the European. You feel me? So when it comes to this, it's like the treatment. Yeah. Can I? Let me see if I can find it real quick. If I can't find it quickly, then we just move on and go back to the books. But I know that I talked about it. You feel me? So let's see. I'm in the back channels. Y'all can't see it. Let me see what I got here. While you guys are waiting, it's about to be 10 o'clock. Make sure you guys are reposting. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing. Make sure that you guys are tapped into all of the different platforms: Patreon, Kick, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Follow me on Twitter. You feel me? Make sure you guys are tapping in with me. I do this every week. Every week I'm going to be here, fam. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. This is what I do. I got a new post up on the Patreon about O.W. Gurley and his fights. So you definitely don't want to miss that. Okay, we got good stuff going. And it's only going to get better. Man. One of the things that I'm just enjoying as far as being a streamer is like all of the stuff that I'm just learning on the go. Like, I'm really, really, you feel me? I just can't wait. To like we really, really see like the full fruition of Hotep history. For sure. And I want all of you guys, this is just a message specifically for the people watching on Twitter. Come on through, man. I do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 o'clock. I want y'all to tap in. I want y'all to tap in with me. Understand? We got a good 100 people watching me on Twitter right now. I appreciate that. I want more of you guys to tap in with me. I want more of you guys to rock with me. You know what I'm saying? It's taking me a little bit longer than I would want, and I want to get back to the book. But there was a portion of the video that I did about Black American towns where I briefly mentioned this beef between Black Americans and Black natives. And let me see. Okay, let's go back. Boom, 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 boom. Let me. So while we doing this, let me check the chat. What we got in the chat? A cat going crazy. Let me see. Virginia had the plantations as well. Most plantations as well. What's that say? Abelese after 1850. Oh, this is a okay. This is a title. Okay. Yeah. I don't know, Kat. I don't know why they wouldn't let you. But whatever titles that you have, you could definitely just put it in the chat, and I'll check them out. All right, it's acting funny. Let's just get back to it. All right. So let's finish this because he was like, this is what I was basically talking about. So, okay. It would have been a very easy matter for me to have taken one of the best horses with the money and run off. And the temptation was truly great to a man like myself who was watching for the earliest opportunity to escape. And I felt confident that I should never have a better opportunity to escape full-handed than then. So did he leave? I need to know if he slid. So let's see. So this is the chapter, right? This is the title of the chapter. The character of my Indian master, slavery among the Indians less cruel, see? Indian carousel, enfeebled health of my Indian master, his death, my escape, adventures in a wigwam, successful progress toward liberty. So I like that they tell you exactly what you're getting into. Well, this is Henry Bibb's autobiography. Henry, Henry, and then Bibb. This is his autobiography told by him. So yeah. So this is an entire chapter, and yeah, we gonna be jumping from book to book. So let's get into this. Why not? So we got the secondary sources. Now it's time to get into some primary sources. You automatically know what this chapter is going to be about because he said that, Indians were less cruel. But let's see. Let's see what this one says. The next morning, I went home with my new master. So off the rip, I'm upset. Off the rip, I'm disappointed in Henry. What do you mean, son? He gave you all of his money. He left you in charge of the horses. And the person that sold you told you, bro, there's going to be a time in place for you to escape from this man. And Henry even said, yo, there is honestly no better opportunity than slide right now. You feel me? And he didn't. Come on, Henry. That was crazy. The next morning I went home with my new master. And by the way, it is only doing justice to the dead to say that he was the most reasonable and humane slaveholder that I have ever belonged to. Yeah, I be trying to tell y'all when we was talking about the objectivity in the last episode, yo, I'm telling y'all will call it whatever you want, but this is how they were talking. Yes, they understood that slavery was wrong, but they also understood reality. And now they're going to gauge, kindness and morality and civility and all of that within their condition, which also includes the people that owned them. It is what it is. He was the last man that pretended to claim property in my person. And although I have freely given the names and residences of all others who have held me as a slave, for prudential reasons, I shall omit giving the name of this individual. So he didn't even want to dox him. He was the owner of a large plantation and quite a number of slaves. He raised corn and wheat for his own consumption only. There was no cotton, tobacco, or anything of the kind produced among them for market. And I found this difference between Negro slavery among the Indians and the same thing among the white slaveholders of the South. The Indians allowed their slaves enough to eat and wear. They have no overseers to whip nor drive them. If a slave offends his master, he sometimes, in a heat of passion, undertakes a chastise to him. But it is as often as the case as otherwise that the slave gets the better of the fight and even flogs his master, for which there is no law to punish him. But when the fight is over, that is the last of it. So far as our religious instruction is concerned, they have it on terms of equality, the bond and the free. They have no respect of persons. They have neither slave laws nor Negro pews. Neither do they separate husbands and wives, nor parents and children. All things considered, if I must be a slave, I had by far rather be a slave to an Indian than to a white man, from the experience I have had with both. This is something that I've read a lot of, that they would rather be under the enslavement of the natives. So when this book says here, now of course this is two different generations. This is in this source is from the 18th century, and then let's put it right here, keep it in perspective. And this is in the 19th century. Okay, so that could be the difference, you know. But we're gonna keep reading. A majority of the Indians were uneducated and still followed up their old heathen traditional notions. They made it a rule to have an Indian dance or frolic about once a fortnight, 2 weeks, and they would come together far and near to attend these dances. They will most generally commence about the middle of the afternoon and would give notice by the blowing of horns. One would commence blowing and another would answer, and so it would all go, and so would all, Jesus, I hate when I do that. And so it would go all around the neighborhood. When a number had got together, they would strike a circle about 20 rods in circumference and kindle up fires about 20 feet apart all around in this circle. In the center, they would have a large fire to dance around, and at each one of the small fires, there will be a squaw to keep up the fire, which looks delightful off at a distance. But the most degrading practice of all was, quote, this singular fact is corroborated in a letter read by the publisher from an acquaintance while passing through this country in 1849. When he's talking about flogging, like the slave actually being able to flog his owner. But the most degrading practice of all was the use of intoxicating drinks. I knew it. Not to be stereotypical, but I knew it was gonna be alcohol. I knew it was gonna be the liquor. I'm telling you, I knew it. Which were used to a great excess by all that attended these stump dances. At almost all of these fires, there was some with rum to sell. There would be some dancing, some singing, some gambling, some fighting, and some yelling. And this was kept up often for 2 days and nights together. Their dress for the dance was most generally a great bunch of bird feathers, coon tails, or something of the kind stuck in their heads, and a great many shells tied about their legs to rattle while dancing. Their manner of dancing is taking hold of each other's hands and forming a ring around the large fire in the center and go stomping around it until they would get drunk or their heads would get to swimming. And then they would go off and drink and another set would come on. Such were some of the practices indulged in by these Indians slave holders. My last owner was in a declining state of health when he bought me, and not long after he bought me, he went off 40 or 50 miles from home to be doctored by an Indian doctor, accompanied by his wife. I was taken along also to drive the carriage and to wait upon him during his sickness, but he was then so feeble that his life was of but short duration after the doctor commenced on him. See, this is what I'm saying, bro. You gotta come on, Henry. You should have been out of here. You sitting in the middle of the dances. I could just imagine him sitting here watching a bunch of drunk Indians dancing and doing all of this stuff, and it's like, bro, the day he bought you, not only could you could escape, the white man that sold you gave you some of his bread. The Indian that bought you gave you all of his bread. He went to sleep. Okay, the horses are ready, willing, and able to take you anywhere you want to go. And your Indian slave owner is sick, bro. Bro, are you kidding me, bro? Like, are you shitting me, bro? You should have been escaped. You should have been escaped. There is no reason for you to have stayed under this man's bondage. No way. You got a sick man who gave you all of his money. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean, son? Get the hell out of Dodge, bro. Oh, man. While he lived, I waited on him according to the best of my ability. Ridiculous. I watched over him night and day until he died, and even prepared his body for the tomb before I left him. He died about midnight, and I understood from his friends that he was what? Not to be buried until the second day after his death. I pretended to be taken on at a great rate about his death, but I was more excited about running away than I was about that. And before daylight the next morning, I proved it, for I was on my way to Canada. Okay, now he finally got some sense. Now Henry finally got some sense. You should have been slid. You should have been slid on him, but you waited until he died. It didn't seem like you was enslaved by son for too long, but I ain't gonna lie, son. Any amount of time after that first night was too long, son. Not gonna hold you. You should have been out of there, son. You should have been out of there. Holy. I never expected a better opportunity would present itself for my escape. I slipped out of the room as if I had gone off to weep for the deceased, knowing that they would not feel alarmed about me until after my master was buried and they had returned back to his residence. And even then, they would think that I was somewhere on my way home, and it would be at least 4 or 5 days before they would make any stir in looking after me. Bro, you were in the best situation to leave. I'm sorry, bro. They weren't even going to look for you until a week after you slid. They wasn't really like, yo, they didn't really want it for real. They didn't get after it for real. Straight up and down. They didn't get after it at all. Oh, okay. I guess, how long is this chapter? Because I ain't about to just read this whole thing. We pretty much got it. Let's see. By that time, if I had no bad luck, I should be out of much danger. After the first day, I lay by in the day and traveled by night for several days and nights, passing in this way through several tribes of Indians. I kept pretty near the boundary line. I recollect getting lost one dark rainy night. Not being able to find the road, I came into an Indian settlement at the dead hour of the night. I was wet, wearied, cold, and hungry, and yet I felt afraid to enter any of their houses or wigwams, not knowing whether they would be friendly or not. But I knew the Indians were generally drunkards. And that occasionally a drunken white man was found straggling among them, and that such an one would be more likely to find friends from sympathy than an upright man. So I passed myself off that night as a drunkard among them. I walked up to the door of one of their houses and fell up against it, making a great noise like a drunken man, but no one came to the door. I opened it and staggered in, falling about and making a great noise. But finally, an old woman got up and gave me a blanket to lie down on. There was quite a number of them lying about on the dirt floor, but not one could talk or understand a word of the English language. I made signs so as to let them know that I wanted something to eat, but they had nothing, so I had to go without that night. I laid down and pretended to be asleep, but I slept none that night, for I was afraid that they would kill me if I went to sleep. About 1 hour before day the next morning, 3 of the females got up and put into a tin kettle a lot of ashes with water to boil, then poured it into 1 quart of corn. After letting it stand a few moments, they poured it into a trough and poured it into thin hominy. They washed it out and boiled it down and called me up to eat my breakfast of it. After eating, I offered them 6 cents, but they refused to accept it. I then found my way to the main road and traveled all that day on my journey, and just at night arrived at a public house kept by an Indian who also kept a store. I walked in and I asked if I can get lodging, which was granted. But I had not been there long before 3 men came riding up about dusk or between sunset and dark. They were white men and I suppose slaveholders. At any rate, when they asked if they could have lodging, I trembled for fear that they might be in pursuit of me. But the landlord told them that he could not lodge them, but they could get a lodging about 2 miles off with a white man, and they turned their horses and started. Okay, so the hotel keeper held it down. You feel me? The landlord asked me where I was traveling to and where I was from. I told him that I had been out looking at the country, that I had thought of buying land, and that I lived in the state of Ohio in the village of Perrysburg. He then said that he had lived there himself and that he had acted as an interpreter there among the Maumee tribe of Indians for several years. He then asked who I was acquainted with there. I informed him that I knew Judge Hollister, Francis Hollister, J.W. Smith, and others. At this, he was so much pleased that he came up and took me by the hand and received me joyfully after seeing that I was acquainted with those of his old friends. Hold my hand. If you dap me up, like, oh, you know the Hollisters, you know J.W. Smith, that's my man. But don't like hold my hand, bro. Like, what's up? What's up? Like, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Let's see. A cat says, where did they get the gold and silver? Good question. I have no idea. I would have to assume the Europeans brought it. You know what I'm saying? Or there was something that they mined. I mean, it's not like America don't have its own gold. Cliff said he wanted to make sure he passed before he dipped off. That's a fact. Oh, man. I get it. Like, you know, you want to make sure that he dead and all of that. But it's like, it'd be one thing if he was super healthy and you know what I'm saying, you want to make sure that he's dead because you poisoned him or something. But he bought you. Like, he purchased you and he was coughing, blood on the handkerchief type sick, bro. Like, he was already dying, bro. I would have slid. Cliff, you can't tell me. Yo, I'm sorry. You get purchased. I'm not over this. Henry, you bugged out for this. You get purchased. You get purchased by somebody who gave you all of their money, told you that they were sick, and also gave you control of their horses, bro. I am gone, bro. I am leaving. As soon as you close your eyes, all you're going to hear is, you're just going to hear a bunch of galloping, bro. You're going to hear nothing but hoofs on the ground. It is a wrap. I am out of here. Hotep is gone. He's out of here, son. But anyway, I could converse with him understandingly from personal acquaintance, for I had lived there when I first went away from Kentucky. But I felt it to be my duty to start off the next morning before breakfast or sunrise. I bought a dozen of eggs and had them boiled to carry with me to eat on the way. Smart. I did not like the looks of those 3 men and thought I would get on as fast as possible for fear I might be pursued by them. I was then about to enter the territory of another slave state, Missouri. I had passed through the fiery ordeal of Sibley, Gatewood, and Garrison, and even had slipped through the fingers of Deacon Whitfield. I had doubtless gone through great peril in crossing the Indian territory and passing through the various half-civilized tribes who seemed to look upon me with astonishment as I passed along. Their hands were almost invariably filled with bows and arrows, tomahawks, guns, butcher knives, and all of the various implements of death which are used by them. And what made them look still more frightful, their faces were often painted red and their hands muffled with birds' feathers, bushes, coontails, and owl heads. But all of this I had passed through, and my long enslaved limbs and spirit were then in full stretch for emancipation. I felt as if one more short struggle would set me free. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's a fact. Hotep Max says the first time he go to sleep, I'm dipping. That's a fact. That's a fact. So we're gonna do what we gonna do next. What we gonna do next? We got a study here. Native Americans and African Americans in the colonial period. This was written in 2006. 2006. So let's see what we got. The history of relations between Native Americans. Can y'all read this? Let me zoom in for y'all. Bang, bang, bang. There we go. Zoom out just a little bit. The history of relations between Native and African Americans must be understood within the context of the greater forces that brought African and Native American peoples together. These forces vary greatly over time and space. No easy generalizations are possible. However, one factor regularly brought the two peoples together from the 16th through the 19th centuries: European and American exploitation of Native Americans and African Americans. And as we're going to see here, not only is it true, obviously, it's going to be the easier thing to talk about. That's just what it is. Okay, it's easy just to relegate these two groups as subjugated groups of the white man. It is what it is. You know, that's what happened in many different instances. But y'all know how I give it up. Y'all know how I play it when it comes to history. You know, I don't be doing all of that. So, let's see. Slavery had its roots in Africa and America as well as Europe. Native American societies had practiced slavery before the arrival of Columbus, but it was nothing like the severely exploitative and racialized form of slavery that arose in the West Indies and the southern United States, which I find so crazy. Like, I get it, because like we just read a primary firsthand account of this man being able to be like, nah, it wasn't even that bad. All it honestly did just get drunk all of the time and all of that. So I get that it wasn't as bad as the Europeans, bro, but it's like, why are we allowing it? Like, why are we just letting them slide with this? Like, I don't get that. Like, everybody said, they start these narratives all of the time the same way, like, yo, slavery was all over the world, blah, blah, blah. And then they tell you that chattel slavery is this like super new unique thing. And it's like, yo, like, to be totally honest with y'all, bro, like, the onset of chattel slavery in this country was brought on by one white man and one black man. I told y'all about that. There's Hugh Gwynn, who sued to have John Punch as his slave for the rest of his life. And then you had Anthony Johnson, who sued to have John Kaser as a slave for life. So it's like, when it comes down to this shit, it's just like, son, like, what are y'all talking about? Because we just read what the natives were doing. They were literally peeling people's scalps off. They were torturing these people. So it's like, so what do you mean? How was it not? It was nothing like the severely exploitative and racialized form of slavery. Like, why? Who cares, bro? They were literally peeling people's scalps off their heads, bro. Like, what are you talking about? They were torturing them for days on end. Like, what do y'all, like, this is the thing that bugs me out so much. Like, I get, like, I'm not giving the European any passes at all, but I'm also not giving the natives any passes. Like, why are we doing that? I'm not doing that. Like, no, savagery is savagery. Let's keep it 100, bro. Like, doing barbarous shit doesn't mean, like, no, you're still a barbarian at that point. You're still a savage. Like, that is what it is. I don't get that. We can sit there, we call out the European for the nonsense that they do. I don't understand why we're sitting there trying to like soften the blow when talking about Native Americans owning slaves. Like, I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's very hypocritical. Anyway, Like Africans, Native American peoples accepted they accepted that enemies captured in war could be treated as slaves. In Native society, a slave was basically someone with no kin to protect him or her from the demands of others. Without kin, these people had no recourse to justice and no one to avenge their deaths if they were killed. Although they were compelled to do hard work and undoubtedly were mistreated, slaves in Native societies were not exploited as systematically and intensively as those in European colonial societies. Yo, that is so crazy, son. We copping deuces for Native American slave. Like, all right, bro. These are not my works. I'm only just reading them. I compile them. I get them compiled. But this is just hilarious. Somebody needs to explain to me. Somebody in the comments, somebody somewhere, tell me what the hell am I missing? Because while you can sit here and tell me, yo, it wasn't as bad as Europeans, I don't understand that you can say that, but then also read that they were like legit torturing these people. Like legit torturing them, peeling their scalps off. They're doing all of the pillaging. They're doing all of the raids. They're doing all of these things. I don't understand. And this is why it's important for you to understand this. Like how many books have we read so far? 1, 2, 3, read 3 books and now this study. 3 books in a study. That's just off of this stream alone. And I want y'all to know, man, like, I give y'all the titles of these books and stuff like that so you can read on your own. But, like, yo, you really reading out here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you getting smarter rocking with Hotep history. I want you to be proud of that fact. If you rocking with my joint, like, every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, like, you are, like, indubitably getting smarter. You are 100% gaining intelligence by rocking with me. We reading books, we reading published papers and stuff like that. Like, this is all good. And I want y'all to see me live disagreeing with papers, live disagreeing with books, agreeing with papers and books. Like, y'all need to know that we think critically over here. I'm not just going to take some text word for it. Now, the primary sources, that's like autobiographies written, like, this is like what they went through. That was Henry Bibb's story. Yeah. That's called The Narrative of the Life and Adventures of Henry Bibb. Let me show y'all so y'all know where we at with it. Oh, that was a nice click. That was a nice click, though. I clicked right on the perfect page. So, yeah, this is his life. Written by himself. That's what it says. This is his words, his book. So when it comes to his life, I'm going to take his word for it. You feel me? But when I start to see text that look like this, you can tell this was written in the past, 10, 15, 20 years. When was this written? 2006, this was written. So, of course, they coming through with 21st century sensibilities and all of that stuff. You feel me? But, like, yeah, I get to disagree with these people because they're just interpreting what happened. This man lived it. So, yeah, primary sources, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, where were we at? Finally, few Native American societies in Eastern North America viewed slavery as a permanent condition passed on from one generation to another. Children of enslaved captives, particularly if one of the parents was a free Native American, were rarely compelled to live as slaves. You see how they focus on Eastern North American, right, and not the Southern Indians? Because we read what the Southern Indians was getting into. And I'm not reading this just to argue with it. I'm listening to what they're saying, but I am going to give pushback where I deem necessary. So here we go. Africans and Native Americans developed a history because Europeans forced them into contact with each other. In many parts of the Americas, particularly the Great Caribbean area, Europeans used Africans to work the lands they took from the Native Americans. But this was not the case everywhere. In some regions, African Americans were used to force Native Americans to work for Europeans, a distinction ruled by demography. In areas with large subjugated Native American populations, Europeans compelled the natives to work for them. African slaves with no ties to native people proved to be useful intermediaries in this process. Thus, in many instances, Africans and Native Americans were pitted against each other in the greater interests of European colonial development. Let's see. At times, Native Americans and African Americans found common cause in resisting the European colonial powers. As early as 1503, enslaved Africans on the island of Santo Domingo, which is Dominican Republic, I think, fled their masters to find refuge among Indians fighting the Spanish, establishing a pattern that will continue throughout the history of slavery in the Americas. Sometimes groups of escaped slaves called Maroons formed their own societies and allied with nearby Native Americans in struggles against Europeans. See, this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that they didn't have allyship and they didn't rock with each other. We know about the Black Seminoles. We know about the Maroons. You know what I'm saying? Like, they did rock with each other. I'm just saying, like, let's just keep it objective. You feel me? Let's keep it objective. That's all I'm saying. To try to portray it like as this kumbaya narrative, I'm not with that. I'm not with that at all. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. CWJ says, how do you read books like that? Do you buy them and download them? Yeah, man. All I do, like, all right, so what I do is I think about a particular topic. Like today, right? Today was the relationship between Black Americans and Native Americans, right? That was what I was thinking about. So I looked for books about that subject. And I either buy and or download them, and then I read them. And now I know about the subject. Like, I'm not here trying to be funny, bro. Like, it is so easy to get smart. Like, I ain't gonna hold you. That's one of the things that, like, is, like, confirmed and affirmed by the ancestors. Like, all you need is a book, bro. Like, all you need is lived experience in books. Now, you gotta vet the text. You see, I'm not just going with any narrative. You got to be able to prove some shit to me. What's up with the primary sources? As a matter of fact, we're gonna go back to what was it? The Black masters. Excuse me, Black slaves, Indian masters, because they have like hyperlinked sources. But yeah, bro, like legit, because I focus on Black American history, it's kind of honed in just off the rip. You know what I'm saying? But like within that, as you know, it's very vast. It's very deep. And so, yeah, like sometimes you get a little vague and being like, yo, what's the relationship between Black Americans and Native Americans throughout history? And you see we're jumping as early. This page starts at the 16th century. So we going all the way back centuries. And so we can get a general overview of it, but then you'll have certain things like, yo, if you specifically want to know what life was like in Mississippi in the year 1843, you can look up books about that and download them and read them. And you'll know exactly what was going on in Mississippi in 1843. Like, real talk, there's rarely not a book written in your subject of interest. And that's why I tell people to read. Yo, read. That's all you got to do. I'm not telling you, CWJ, like you don't read, but I'm dead telling y'all, yo, just read. It's all you got to do. And that's the reason why, like, I had a video that I was going to play tonight, but I was like, man, fuck that. It's a 12-minute video. I don't even, like, it was about the subject, but it's like, nah. Like, nah, yo. I promote reading here. We've read 3 books in a study, and that's average for an average stream for us. Like, we're gonna go through several sources on this show. You gotta be able to read. You gotta have an interest in reading. I'm cultivating, and CWJ, this ain't even got, like, at this point, I answered your question. This is just my rant about this, and we're gonna get back to the work. Like, I really want y'all to understand how important reading is. It's too many times where I'm having these types of conversations with people, like in debate form, and then they send me a screenshot of Grok or send me a screenshot of ChatGPT. And it's like, fuck, nigga, no, read that shit. Like, go read a book and then report back to me. Don't let the robot do all of the work for you. Don't let the robot hit you with the cognitive dissonance, because whatever you put into that AI is what they're going to give you. So I see the way, see, y'all don't know because I use AI all of the time, but the way I use AI and the way a lot of other people use AI is very, very differently. I'm not ever asking AI to do something for me. Like as far as cognitively, I use AI to help me search for primary sources. Primarily, that's what I do. I don't really go ask AI like, hey, is it true that Black Americans blah, 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 or prove or confirm, whatever I believe based upon all of the things you know. Like, you have to understand that the AI language models that a lot of y'all use, ChatGPT, Grok, whatever it is, it's glorified Google. It's glorified Google. And when you get as deep in the scholarship as I do, is just certain things you can't Google. Certain things you have to go in the archives and find yourself. I remember, and I'm going on a tangent here, but it's important because I really can't stress this shit enough. Hold on. There was something that I was looking up, son. It was something that I was looking up. And I looked it up, and Google, the all-knowing Google AI that's supposed to be able to solve all disputes and all of that shit, they told me this shit didn't exist, and then I was looking dead at it. I want to say it was the Negro Trade Week. Let's see. Oh, man. I knew it. Like, Google was like, nah, that doesn't exist. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? It 100% exists. No. Damn, son. It was something that Google said that didn't exist that I know exactly it exists. Man. Look at HJ. All right. Well, anyway, basically, I want to say it was the National Negro Trade Week. The National Negro Trade Week. I'd seen a huge ass advertisement about it. So I Googled it to get further information on it, and Google legit told me that shit did not exist. Google, all knowing, the AI that y'all love so much, told me that it didn't exist. And that's why I'm like, yo, son, y'all can't just rely on Google like that. Y'all can't rely on AI like that. You will be lied to, especially if you ask it to lie to you. You know how many times I'll be looking up something and the AI will be just make up somebody? I was looking up black bankers to do the Black Bankers episode, right? And I was asking for a compilation of names, you feel me, of Black American bankers. The AI gave me some made-up person called Cassius M. Clay Jr. Yep, you heard that right. Cassius Clay Jr. was a black banker. I go to look the person up, and no such person exists. Not at all. So I just want y'all to be wary when y'all be talking that AI shit. I want y'all to feel dumb. In all other parts of your life, you can do whatever the fuck you want. But I want you to feel dumb. Okay? Sending me screenshots of AI. I would much rather, or I respect you more if you send me a screenshot of a book. If you send me screenshots of a fucking, a primary source. And just so I'm very clear about this, very clear about this, for all of you niggas that send regurgitated excerpts from books, screenshots from books, and you can't cite that source, you're equally as bad as the AI people. Just letting y'all know while we're on the subject. I understand that you are citing a book, but you don't know the name of that book, and I can't go read it myself. And more than likely, that screenshot is blurry as hell. You've been remixing it. You've been using that screenshot for months, if not years, and you've never cared to give anybody any type of citing of that source. That's the reason why a lot of these white nationalists get to talk about how there was like 70% or 76% of Jewish Americans that owned black Americans during slavery and stuff like that. And while we did have a whole, episode about that, that stat, that screenshot that they forever using, and it's supposed to be like a chart and all of that, it doesn't exist anywhere. Somebody made that in Microsoft Word and been passing it around since the early 2000s. There is no book from back then that has that graph in it. That's something that they made. And that's what I'm talking about. So y'all be circulating these same screenshots of that one book that corroborates what you're saying, and you can't even tell me the title of it so I can read it myself. Every time that y'all see a title on here, y'all see I do it to show, like, yo, listen, man. The name of this book is Black Slaves and Indian Masters, or Black Slaves, Indian Masters. Read it yourself. And it has the annotations and all of that stuff, so you can click and find the sources yourself. Let's see what they look like. Boom. Right here. Right here. Primary sources. French sources document a case from 1739. You got the sources right here. The 1789 Treaty of San Lorenzo. Petition to the President and Congress, 1807. Primary sources, all through it. You feel me? So, damn, what was we at? Let's see if I can do it through this way. 22 is gonna give me another. How many options they gonna give me? Haha, right back. Man, I'm the Control F wizard. You feel me? All right. So we going back and forth. So y'all want to swing back around to this one? Oh, I had to borrow this one, right? Why did it do that? All right, let me do this. Since they want to act crazy. Shout out to Henry Bibb, you know what I mean? Now we right back, dummy. Anyway, yeah, we got to borrow it. Yeah, sometimes when it comes to the Internet Archive, sometimes you just got to borrow the book, fam. Sometimes you got to borrow the book, read it, you know what I mean? And that's that. Come back to it. So this is where we left off. What's the next chapter about? They fled amongst the Indians? Okay. Wow. Chapter 2, they fled amongst the Indians. We talking about 1984. I don't like that date. It's mad contemporary. So yeah, we just jumping through the sources. I don't think we're going back to Henry Bibb. We can close that out. Let's jump to this. This is page 19. So we can page 19. But this is the Black Seminoles, history of a freedom-seeking people. All right, that's the the citing of the sources. You see how easy it is. For me to cite my sources. It's not hard at all, fam. It's not hard at all because I want y'all to read this for yourselves. It ain't like I appreciate whatever grace or credence or whatever y'all give me, son. But it's really all about y'all being able to read this stuff for yourselves. All right, so chapter 1 is their best soldiers are black. Every Negro found in arms will be put to death without mercy. Oh, wow. And this is General Thomas Flournoy, Brigadier. So, okay, let's get into it. And then we'll be able to come up for air and talk about it. All right, so it says, The year 1812 was a difficult one for American citizens. They had to defend their hard won independence, once again fighting the British. It was not a good time to be born. But during the tumultuous year, a young black woman living among the Seminole Indians gave birth to a son in the wilds of Florida. Uh, Alachua, Savannah West of St. Augustine. We all know about St. Augustine. Fort Mose is historically known as the first black settlement or black town in the country. You feel me? So, that's where that comes from. All right. She named him John. Her identity is unknown, as is the baby's father. Perhaps he was the Seminole tribesman, Charles Cavallo, who may have owned her. This child of obscure origins would later become a man of many names and varied roles. From Florida to Texas, through the Indian Territory and Mexico, John would doggedly pursue one goal: freedom for himself and his people. This is their story. Okay. I'm about to say. Right before John's birth, south of the American border in the territory still precariously held by Spain, a net of international intrigue was entangling the blacks and the tribespeople of East Florida. The United States had coveted that area since the turn of the century. With Spain bled dry by Napoleon's armies, Spanish officials in East Florida were virtually powerless to resist American expansionism. Thus, on January 15th, 1811, Congress secretly authorized President Madison to seize all or any part of Florida if the, quote, local authorities agreed or a foreign government tried to occupy any portion of the region. General George Matthews, former governor of Georgia, was sent to East Florida to annex it to the United States. During the summer of 1811, he actively encouraged American settlers in the area to create their own government. U.S. border troops were expected to assist them. Obviously, local authority was an elastic term. Then, on March 14th, 1812, the so-called Patriots, mainly Georgians, hoisted their flag. Okay, bolstered by federal gunboats, they moved swiftly. On March 18th, they seized Amelia Island, northeast of modern Jacksonville, and presented it to General Matthews. The Patriots then marched south. Within a month, they had besieged St. Augustine, capital of East Florida. The company's capitulation, and with it, the whole Spanish province, seemed inevitable. Okay, although the entire garrison consisted of only about 400 men, mostly untrained local militia, the Spaniards still possessed two potential sources of military strength: Florida's Seminole Indians and blacks. But the Patriots were so contemptuous of the Seminoles that they coolly began apportioning their lands as bounties to one another. General Matthews reportedly told the principal Seminole chief, King Payne, that he, quote, intended to drive him from his land. John H. McIntosh, a leading patriot, warned Bowlegs. His name was Bowlegs? All right. Another chief that, quote, he intended to make him a waiting man. But cut off from St. Augustine and its munitions by the blockading force of Patriots and U.S. troops at Picolata on the St. Johns River, the Seminoles took no immediate action. Although the tribespeople faced losing their homes to the land-hungry American settlers who would subsequently stream into Florida, blacks were confronted by a far more serious menace. Those held as vassals by the Seminoles dreaded returning to the strict slavery of the South, and the numerous free and fugitive blacks who lived among the Indians, many of them slaves from Georgia and South Carolina or the descendants, felt just as threatened. And this is what we were talking about in the cultural subgroups episode, where we were talking about all of these escaped slaves from Georgia and South Carolina going to Florida for refuge, basically, and finding refuge among the Seminoles. And then, of course, the, co-mixing and all of that stuff, that's where you're going to, get a lot of your black natives from as well. Because this is, again, talking about the 17th to 18th century. Like, this is just in that time. So, except for 20 years of British rule just before and during the American Revolution, Florida had been under Spanish authority for nearly a century. The territory had been a natural, sometimes even official, refuge for runaways. As early as 1687, 17th century, the Spaniards bedeviled rival English settlements by offering freedom and land in return for military service, which is often the offer that a lot of people got. The British gave it to black American slaves. As you can see here, the Spanish offered it to people under British rule. Like, it is what it is. Let's see. To British slaves who fled to them, see? But when Spain ceded Florida to Great Britain in 1763 in exchange for Cuba, most of the black military colonists were evacuated to Havana. So we got to find out about the black Americans who are in Havana, because we learned about the ones in DR and ones in Mexico, ones in Trinidad, ones in Nova Scotia, ones in Sierra Leone, Liberia. Like, there's mad places that black Americans went to during these centuries. So now we got to look at the black Americans who went to Cuba. So 1763, we got black Americans in Cuba. All right. A few opted to remain and settled among Indians who were friendly to the Spanish. In 1725, an English agent visited the Lower Creeks, who were loosely allied with the Spaniards. He found fugitive blacks among them, protected by some of the chiefs. In addition, some runaways probably had always preferred to stay with the tribe's people rather than subject themselves to supervision and discipline in St. Augustine. Thus, after the British acquired Florida, escaped slaves were no longer officially welcomed, although they probably continued to be received by some of the Indians. With the outbreak of war between England and its former colonies in 1775, fugitive blacks from Georgia and South Carolina found Florida a safe haven once again. Meanwhile, bands of Lower Creeks had constantly drifted into Florida during the 1700s. Some groups wanted to avoid the English, but others were their allies and fought the Spanish and their tribal partners. So again, you're seeing this same pattern for centuries. You have the Europeans being able to side with a particular tribe or tribe's people against their enemy. So the Europeans are fighting amongst each other. You got the British and the French, or the French and the Spanish, or the British and this, like, whatever it is. They got beef. The Europeans got beef, fighting for land, all of this stuff, right? And then you have these Native American tribes who are also doing the same thing amongst their own. And then you have black Americans who are caught in the middle of it all. And so, yeah, black Americans are used as allies, bargaining chips, ransoms, like, you name it, that's what they're being used for. Slaves, obviously. So, yeah, this is like how I know, like, yeah, while black Americans, we got our own stuff to deal with. When you zoom out, bro, all of these different groups is going through what they going through, and black Americans are like, dog, like, we just want our own shit still. So yes, I know about the black American slave owners. I know about black Americans getting into some shit and all of that other stuff. But it's like, for the most part, fam, like, the ancestors just wanted to be left alone. It's like, yo, I got allies and enemies in all groups. I got allies and enemies amongst the Europeans. I got allies and enemies amongst the natives. I got allies and enemies amongst my own. Like, so, like, this is the life of the black American. You feel me? Everybody got all of this drama. We in the middle, like, Jesus. All right. So, let's see. Meanwhile, some groups wanted to avoid the English, but others were their allies and fought the Spanish and their tribal partners. Because the immigrants had separated from the main body of Lower Creeks, they were sometimes known as Seminoles or seceders. Their principal town was Cuscowilla on the Alachua Savannah west of St. Augustine. It was founded by Cowkeeper, a chief of the Oconee band. Cowkeeper? All right, man. See, I would see if, like, I would have to have a fly native name. I'm not Cowkeeper is. I'm not dealing with that, son. I'm gonna need like, keeper of gold or something like that, gold holder. You know what I'm saying? Wealth man or something like that. I need to like my name should talk about the bag. My name should be like land. You know what I'm saying? King of lands or something like that. My name got to be something fire. Like the names that I'm reading, these are not very impressive tribe names. I'm not gonna hold you. Chief Cowkeeper, bro. Get out of here, son. Get out of here with that name. Chief Cowkeeper. You can keep that name. How about that? Keep that. Nobody's respecting Chief Cowkeeper. Nah, son. I need something fly, son. I need a fly name. I need Chief. Well, Chief Hotep would be fire. But like, yeah, like I need Chief. All of this is mine. Chief, it's up. Chief, fuck around and find out. You know what I'm saying? Chief, fuck out of here. Chief, like, come on, son. Chief, I'm not going. You know what I'm saying? I need something like that. I need something that's going to instill respect and fear when you hear my name. Cowkeeper is not getting it done. Chief Cowkeeper is not getting it done, Jack. Sorry. I'm letting you know that right now. It's not getting it done. Anyway. Because he staunchly supported England, it is unlikely that he protected blacks fleeing from British plantations, obviously. During the 2 decades of English rule, some Seminole chiefs began to buy blacks. Surprise, surprise. They and their Lower Creek kin noted the prestige that both the Spanish and English attached to owning slaves. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. It's all about owning the niggas. Anyway, additionally, British officials had given blacks to some Indian leaders as reward for services. King's gifts is what they called them. So I get it. You got the ancestors fleeing Georgia and South Carolina, making it to Florida. There's some Seminoles and all of that there and all of that. But please believe when they ran away from the Georgia and South Carolina plantations, they 100% were met with certain allies, but also they were met and seen like their peoples enslaved by these Indians, like for sure. Like believe it. Nobody's hands are clean, son. I want y'all to know that when it comes to history, nobody's innocent. When it comes to history, nobody's innocent. You understand? Nobody's innocent. Everybody played a part. We talked about black American slave owners, bro. So you know I'm not over here sitting there thinking that we a bunch of defenseless, hapless victims and all that other stuff. We participated where we could and didn't where we couldn't, and that's just what it was. But everybody is guilty of something. It's history, fam. It's humans. Dog, it's already 11 o'clock. That's so crazy. These hours be going by so fast. So we are now on the 4th book. Man, I love this. I want y'all to be proud of this. Like, yo, I know you're listening to me read very well, by the way. I know I'll be like little tongue twisters and all of that, but I'll be giving a good word. But yo, these are books that you can read. I implore you guys, please read. That's tonight's moral. That's tonight's lesson. Read more. Hashtag read more. Read more. Read more. For real. All right. So what we going at? King's gifts. The Seminoles were somewhat perplexed about how to use their new property best. They apparently had no intention of devoting their lives to managing slaves. Soon, however, they solved their dilemma by supplying the blacks with tools to cut down trees, build houses for themselves, and raise corn. When the crop was harvested, their masters received a reasonable proportion of it as a kind of tribute. One observer reported that no more than 10 bushels of corn were ever demanded. Now, that's one thing that I did see. And wow, if we go off of what Henry was saying as far as his experiences as a slave under Indian rule, the video that I made and a few other sources that we talked about, one other source that we read tonight as far as like how slavery under Native Americans was less cruel, and it's because of capital. Just being honest, like you can call it capitalism or whatever, it's fine. Like I wouldn't be mad at you. I would consider it more communism just because it's closer to slavery, but whatever it is, like in the pursuit of profit, a lot of the natives weren't into that. The natives were into trading. They were into having, like, either you having a good trade or a bad trade. If I'm somebody who gave up a little and to get a lot, that was a good trade for me. On your side, that's a bad trade. Stuff like that. You feel me? But it wasn't like to make the most profit as possible. So when it comes down to raising crops and shit, it's not about having acres and acres of one crop and being able to harvest all of those crops and being able to sell it into market and make all of this extra surplus of profit and stuff like that. It's more about being able to, have enough to sustain yourself and a little bit more just for emergencies, or be able to spread throughout the tribe and stuff like that. So I will see that the economic incentive is not the exact same. It's similar, but not the exact same. Like, you're still being able to benefit off the labor of slavery, you feel me, or of slaves, but you're not doing it so extensively that you are trying to pursue profit and stuff like that. It's just to be able to distribute amongst your people, and you're going to take a large point, like as a tribute or whatever. But I mean, objectively speaking, it's like, I get all of that, but it's like, no, because I'm going to sound like a coon. Like, I'm going to sound like a coon. Like, I got to chill. I'll be a little bit too objective sometimes. And I got to deal with, I'm still a 21st century Black American man, and I know my peoples. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the pursuit of profit was better, especially because it resulted in the crazy treatment of the ancestors. So it is what it is. I'm not going to get into it. We don't got to get that controversial tonight. I'll probably mention it tomorrow on the podcast. All right. We're going to finish this up because it's already 11 o'clock. Make sure you guys are reading this book. Let's see. One observer reported that no more than the blah, blah, blah. The remainder was kept by the so-called slaves. See, the blacks soon acquired livestock, which their Seminole patrons never meddled with. At slaughtering time, they supplied the tribe's people with a fat hog or a side of beef. It was a mutually beneficial relationship. The owner provided protection, and the slave paid a modest amount in return. The arrangement was obviously quite different from the traditional plantation bondage. And I'm willing to accept that. I'm not sitting here saying that it got to be one-to-one. All I'm sitting here saying is that, you will have slave narratives. It was like, my slave master was like mad cool. Like, he didn't whoop me. He didn't whip me ever. He didn't have all these crazy demands on me or nothing like that. Like, I went to work. We had off on Sundays. I was with my family. I went on strike. Like, it was like, you have slave narratives like that. You feel me? And it just so happens that it happened a little bit more often under Native Americans than it was with Europeans. That's just what it is. Let's see. Georgia and South Carolina blacks soon learned of the advantageous position enjoyed by the Seminole slaves. And so they understood that there was, like, I said that, right? I set that stage, but they know. So they like, I'm willing to run away from the European, even if it means being enslaved by the Native Americans. Like, hopefully, the best bet is to be free when I make it to Florida. But even if I'm in bondage, I heard that, I heard the slavery not that bad, fam. It's like going from like 23-1 in a max security prison to go to some medium security, and you got mad day room privileges and all of that other stuff. Like, it's not hard labor for real. It's like, I could deal with this. Slavery is a thing. This is the law of the land, or this side of the way things go. So it is what it is. But if I'm going to be a slave, I'm going to be the one with the least amount of like scrutiny and like on my body, whips and chains and all this other stuff. It's like, nah, fam. Like, the natives, they don't really even be caring like that, fam. Like, if you grow some corn for them and make sure they have it, they let you keep everything else. You get to raise your own livestock. You get to, give them a side of some pig or something like that. They off your body for real. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I understand. You know, thus, during both war and peace, runaways fled through the wilderness to the Seminole villages. Yeah, I believe it. They put themselves under the care of various chiefs, such as King Payne. See, now there we go. Now that's the name. That's a name, King Payne. I'm rocking with that. I can see a rapper being named that today, King Payne. I like that name. Yeah. It's obviously regal. Also letting motherfuckers know how I'm coming when it comes to this shit. I'm King Payne. I rock with that name. That's a good name. Who has succeeded Cowkeeper? Yeah, let's get Cowkeeper the fuck out of here. For sure. Move Cowkeeper out of the way. I don't know what he was on. I'm the new chief in town. Call me King Payne. Shout out to Cowkeeper, but he's no longer in charge. We are under new management. We are under the management of King Payne. And it's 1785. Okay? Unlike his pro-British predecessor, King Payne became reconciled to the Spanish government and followed its lenient policy towards fugitive blacks. So again, shout out Cowkeeper, who came before me, but we doing King Payne shit. And I know that he was fucking with the British, but we not doing that anymore. We not rocking with the British. I actually like the Spanish. I like the Spanish white man. See, the English white man, he got it, whatever, but I'm liking the Spanish white man. We gonna rock with him. You feel me? And where me and the Spaniards get along at is that we don't really be having that type of smoke for black people like that. Like, yeah, we got a labor force. That's what we'll call them. We'll call them a labor force. You know, we got that. And yeah, they grow some corn for us or whatever and tend to the horses and all that. But like we not on it like how the British was on it. You feel me? So yeah. Indian patrons probably asserted ownership of their slaves if they were claimed by a former master or any other white man. But whites generally did not understand this unusual arrangement. They perceived it as only what they knew, conventional bondage. The blacks lived apart from the Seminoles in their own villages, prized evidence of their independence. I ain't mad at that. Additionally, their patrons did not supervise them, and the blacks would share the soft key pot. Soft key is a gruel made of corn with their owners whenever they visited their homes. They also habitually carried arms. See, this is another thing. This is another thing. It's complete opposite, because the white man was not trying to have the black man armed, especially as his slave. That would have been the worst idea possible. But the Seminoles, they was like, nah, they got guns. They got guns, but like, we not whipping them and shit like that. Like they working, but everybody works. Yeah, I own them, but everybody owns somebody out here. Like, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same. And I get it. The books done convinced me it wasn't the same. Now, trust and believe, I know in many instances it was very much the same. Okay? Very much the same. But in these certain instances, be like, you gotta let the primary source. Like, it is what it is. All right. Thus, except for their annual tribute, the blacks were no more subordinate to the chiefs than the Seminoles themselves. See, that's what I'm saying. So this is different. The Seminoles were different. And that, you know what? That's a great thing to understand. No tribe is created equal. Every different tribe treated the ancestors differently. Some were like the Seminoles that were more lax. Some were like the Comanche that took no prisoners. Some were like the Apache with a mixture of both. Then you had the Choctaws and the Chickasaws. Like, these are not just one. Like I said, this is not one homogenous group of people. The Seminoles were more of an ally than an enemy to us. You feel me? For sure. But let's do. Let's see if we can look up. Yeah. Civil warriors. Got you. Heard you. Let's see. Let's do Native American Confederates PDF. See what we get. American Indian Confederates, Native Americans, a study of their Civil War experience. All right, let's see what they got us. What they got for us in this. It's 2 pages long. What they got. This paper was prepared by the Sons of Confederate Veterans Education Committee for the distribution for professors, teachers, librarians, principals, ethnic leaders, members of the press. This looks very boring. I'm not going to lie. Probably good information on it, but it looks boring. All right, so we won't do the PDFs. Let's just do some pictures. It's already 11 o'clock. My eyes is burning from looking at this screen. So look. Look at this. Look at this. Would you look at this? Yeah, they was pro-slavery than a motherfucker. This is what I'm trying to tell y'all, man. Like, I don't know what to tell y'all, son. Like, you had some cool ones. You got some people that was down for the cause. And then you had other ones that was definitely with the shits. They were with the Confederate shits. They were definitely Confederates. As a matter of fact, let's go to the WIC. Let's go to the WIC. Native Americans in the Civil War. Let's see. Refers to the involvement of various Native American tribes in the United States during the American Civil War. An estimated 20,000 Native Americans fought on both sides in the war, with some reaching high ranks in both armies. Many more helped in support roles such as supply and sabotage. A majority of Native Americans fought for the Confederacy, in part to protect slavery in Indian territory, as well as a promise by the Confederate government that it would recognize an independent Native American country following the war's conclusion. A large number of Native Americans fought on the side of the Union as well, hoping their support would ensure the federal government's respect of their rights in treaties. Many tribes initially viewed the conflict as a white man's war, reluctant to become involved after enduring forced removal from ancestral lands during the Trail of Tears. Nonetheless, some saw military service as a means to gain political favor and discrimination and secure territorial rights. Hopes that largely proved unfulfilled as removal and pacification policies continued even after emancipation. You feel me? So they was with the Confederates. You feel me? Just wanted to put that out there. All right, y'all, I'm tired. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm tired. I've been up and at 'em all day. So we gonna finish up. I'm getting up out of here. You feel me? Yeah. So let's see. Where we at? Oh, there we go. Soon the distinction between purchased slaves and runaways, if it ever existed, blurred and essentially vanished. Indeed, the relationship between the blacks and the tribespeople might be described as primitive democratic feudalism, with basically no personal inequality between the two groups. Years later, General Edmund P. Gaines spoke with the approximate accuracy of the, quote, Seminole Indians with their black vassals and allies. The Seminoles eventually found the blacks useful in areas besides agriculture. They all spoke some European language, usually English or Spanish, and soon learned their patrons' Muskegon, a dialect, See, y'all. Therefore, they became the Indians' principal interpreters. Furthermore, those who fled to Florida as adults knew the ways of the whites, so they were often able to predict their behavior in a particular situation. Yeah, same. When you've been around them and you understand them, you feel me? Like, you can kind of predict what's going on. Like, I agree with that. No matter what race it is, but in this particular situation, like, for sure. Given these attributes, the transitions from interpreters and unofficial advisors to tribal counselors was easy. In one case, Juan, a former slave of King Payne, served as an interpreter for the Seminoles and had their utmost confidence. Thus, an association originally limited to mutual material advantage became cemented by reciprocal respect and affection. Intermarriage inevitably occurred, although probably not often because the blacks lived independently and separately. The contrast between the black Seminole situation and the Southern slavery was striking. Their everyday life was idyllic compared to that of a plantation slaves. They built houses in their own villages, Indian style, with palmetto planks lashed to upright posts and thatched with palmetto leaves, and their dwellings were usually better constructed than the tribes people's. Furthermore, black Seminoles were not bound to the hoe. They spent part of their time hunting and fishing. During war, men and youths armed themselves and assembled under their own captains. Their leader, in turn, obeyed the Seminole chief to whom the blacks owed allegiance. So when you have a bunch of black Americans you have them coming from different parts of the South going into Oklahoma, because like these are not the same Indians, but you got to think about like they had similar living experiences, like the Oklahoma Creek Nation, Indians and stuff like that. And then they're intermingling and intermarrying and all of that other stuff with black Americans. And then, slavery ends and more people are moving to Oklahoma looking for, new life and, all of this stuff. They're coming in, building on lands that the black natives are looking at like, yo, y'all are newcomers here. Y'all are essentially colonizers. And they had beef. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. They thrived amazingly well under this regime. A traveler in the early 1820s, a time when the Seminoles, both the tribes people and the blacks, were not particularly prosperous, declared, quote, "The Negroes, both men and women, are the finest looking people I've ever seen. They are much more intelligent than their owners." So they got houses that look better than their owners. They're smarter than their owners. Like, I mean, yo. Another observer stated that, quote, "The Indian Negroes are a fine formed athletic race and speak English as well as Indian and feel satisfied with their situation." There was no group in Florida that would resist annexation more than the black Seminoles. The Spaniards would forfeit self-rule and the tribes people their land, but the black Seminoles would simultaneously lose their independence, their homes, and their freedom. Ain't that a bitch? Ain't that a conundrum? Son? Like, not all the free blacks in Florida lived among the Seminoles. Many owed their emancipation to lenient Spanish laws. Others had escaped to the British during the turmoil of the American Revolution or to the Spaniards after the retrocession. But the black Seminoles were the boldest, the best trained to arms, and the most strategically located to bring themselves and the Indians into the struggle. Therefore, they were the most effective allies to whom the St. Augustine authorities could now turn. Meanwhile, the Spanish received a brief reprieve. The U.S. government, under Federalist and Northern pressure, decided that General Matthews had proceeded too openly. In early April 1812, President Madison summarily dismissed him. This action, however, was largely subterfuge. Madison wanted to avoid open hostilities with Spain because war with England was imminent. Secretary of State James Monroe soon ordered Georgia Governor David B. Mitchell to assume command in East Florida. Mitchell was assigned to restore the original situation, but only if the Patriots were granted amnesty. This allowed him to keep troops in Florida, as Governor Mitchell could also call on the state militia. He immediately mobilized part of it. The militia commander hoped that the Seminoles would take up the cudgels for the Spaniards, and that's going to be it, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to be it. I'm sorry. I'm over here like literally falling asleep while I'm talking. And if I'm falling asleep while I'm talking, I know y'all probably falling asleep too. So we're going to close out these tabs. I want to say thank y'all again for coming through to another episode of Hotep History Live. Hold on. I want to put some ending music on. I ain't going to lie. That music that we had playing earlier, that's going to be a good outro music for sure. So let's put that back on. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm super proud of myself when it comes to my my YouTube numbers, my Twitter numbers. Like it's doing this thing, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody for coming through. Tonight was very heavy on the super chats, like super fire. Super fire. Crystal says, "Don't knock Chief Cowkeeper. He was in charge of a vital resource. Man, that name was ass, man. Cowkeeper was a very terrible name, son. Cowkeeper was whack. Not gonna hold you. Maybe it sounded cooler. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it sounded cooler, like in their native language and all that. But that name was Trinidadash. Trinidadash. You feel me? No, we're not playing that one again. Which one is it? Is it this one?
Yeah, this is it. This is my joint right here. This is off the live concert. This is one of the more slept on Wiz Khalifa and Currency projects. This is up there for me. This is honestly right under How Fly to me. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. But like I said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This was another episode of Hotep History Live. I was your host, President Hotep Dude, representing Hotep Nation. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Shout out to everybody that came through. You feel me? When I took the hand out, I'm the big dog. So yes, so we'll be back on Monday. But before then, we got the podcast tomorrow at noon. Come through. Yes. Saturday, Hotep History Podcast at noon. The host, President Hotep Dude. My man Hotep Nat. We're gonna be talking about Black American traditionalists. Bring your ass to the spaces. Bring your ass to the spaces, hop on stage and argue with me or agree with me. However you feel. However, we are going to be rocking tomorrow at noon. Make sure that you're there. Make sure that you subscribe and follow all the things. We got Patreon. Patreon.com/HotepHistory. Tix.com/HotepHistory. /@HotepHistory. Instagram Hotep History. Twitter Hotep History. Follow me. And then on TikTok Hotep History. Hotep History. Everything except for come through, subscribe, like, comment, do all of the things, man. I need you to participate in this journey that I am on, teaching all of this dope ass history. As you see tonight, we just scratched the surface. We got a whole bunch more that we're gonna be talking about. You have been amazing, chat. You have been amazing. And shout out to all the people in the chat. Cliff, Chat, Boom. Who else came through tonight? Memphis came through tonight. Shout out to everybody that came through tonight, man. You are amazing. As always, you cannot have the future without the present, and you cannot have the present without the past. And we don't study history to live
in the past, but to order our steps in the present so we can positively what? Affect our future. So thank you guys for coming on through to another episode of Hotep History Live. I will see you guys tomorrow on Spaces at noon, and then back again on Monday at 8 p.m. And as always, Hotep and Bill, man. Hotep and Bill.